All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Florida Basement Podcast. I have a special guest here. His name is Juan Ayala. You might have seen him in as a recurring actor on Blindspot. He also has a leading co-role on the short film Flag. Correct? Flag?
Yeah.
You have a short film? Yes. Also, you were playing an investigative journalism in one of my favorite shows, For Life. I think you starred in one of those episodes as well. I had to rewatch the episode, so it was like, oh, it's him. Also, he has his own podcast called Actors with Issues. You can find it on Spotify, Anchor, Google Podcasts, or any Apple podcast. I really like what you do. Thank you for coming in, Juan Ayala. I'm sorry. Thank you for joining the Florida Basement. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Coming to you all from a small Brooklyn apartment. So
you're back in Brooklyn now?
Yes, I have.
Oh, okay.
I've been in Brooklyn since I moved here June of 2019 when COVID broke out. I didn't want to be cooped up in my apartment by myself for God knows how long. It ended up being, forever. So I went back to my family in Connecticut, which is about an hour and a half from the city. First went to Jersey for a week to spend some time with my boyfriend and his family for his birthday, and then just shot straight over to Connecticut and ended up being there for like 4 months, which was way longer than I anticipated. I was like, a couple weeks until things sort of die down, because we had no idea the gravity of what COVID was and what it was really.
Correct.
But yeah, I've been back in Brooklyn since like late July, and yeah, happy to be back in the city. Happy to be back to work in the acting business and in the fitness industry, which is what pays the bills and keeps the lights on while I'm auditioning. I gotta have a survival job.
Yeah, the survival job.
Yeah.
And what part of Connecticut? I lived in Connecticut for about 6 months. I lived in Orange, the small town of Orange.
Yeah.
And then I worked in New Canaan. And I used to have to pass by Bridgeport, and they told me that Bridgeport was like, how do I say, the key to New York City is like the I forget what they call it in Connecticut. It's the entrance to New York City from the north, because you have to pass by Bridgeport. So yeah, I know a little bit of that area.
Yeah. It's funny. That's much kinder. I thought you were going to say, like, oh, God, he's going to insult Bridgeport like everybody else does.
I'm holding that.
Because I'm sure you've heard, maybe you've experienced it. Bridgeport isn't the nicest part of Connecticut. Connecticut, you cross the street, you are in the ghetto, and then you cross to the other side of the street, and it's like super suburban and whatever. So it's like, it's very weird how quickly things can change. But I grew up in Bridgeport. Was born there, grew up there.
Great food, great Spanish food, great food. I mean, Jamaican food, amazing.
So multicultural. I love Bridgeport for that reason. I don't know how the hell my immigrant Salvadorian family ended up in Connecticut of all places. A lot of people go to Texas, Florida, New York, Connecticut though. So random, but they ended up there. I'm happy they did, because I grew up in a pretty good place. But yeah, so I grew up in Bridgeport, moved to Trumbull a bit later with my family for high school. They just wanted us to go to some better high schools, and which would lead to better colleges, which I went to community college anyway. So, yeah, so I'm from Bridgeport and Trumbull, which is by Fairfield. I'm sure you've heard of Fairfield. And
yes,
we're about like 30 minutes from Stamford, which is like kind of the little mini New York City, because it's very sort of
right there. It's right there.
City-like, lots of high rises. Yeah. If you're going to New York from Connecticut, you're going to see Stamford on the way.
On the way, correct. Merritt Parkway. You got the Merritt Parkway and then I-95.
Yep. Merritt Parkway is like walking distance from my parents' house. Super close.
Oh, really? So I was passing you by all the time. All right. And now I have a lot of questions. Like, I really do have a lot of questions. One of the questions was, because I saw that you majored in drama. Is that correct?
Theater arts.
Theater arts.
The piece of paper says theater arts.
Theater arts.
Drama.
Okay.
Theater, same thing.
Okay. And how was that experience? Because I saw that from there, I'm guessing since it's theater arts, you went into theater, and it also
Mm.
stated that you basically you made the jump or the pivot to film. So I was wondering if you could take me through the experience in college, because it seems like you worked with a lot. I'm guessing you had a lot of internships or worked with a lot of theaters out there. So I would like to know how'd you got it. How did that play out?
Yeah, so thankfully, because Connecticut is so close to New York, there is a very big local theater scene.
Okay.
Um, so there are two big unions actors aspire to join, because you have like legal protection. You have like, you join a union, they're protecting you while you're on the job.
Hmm.
The SAG-AFTRA is the Screen Actors Guild, and I think the AFTRA part, SAG, you hear of like the SAG Awards or
The
whatever, that's
SAG
Screen
Awards,
Actors
yes.
Guild, so that's for TV, and then the AFTRA is the American Federation of Radio and Television Artists, something like that. I'm probably messing up a word there.
And these are
Um,
unions.
yeah, so SAG-AFTRA is the on camera or the on screen actors union, and then
Okay.
AEA, or the Actors Equity Association, is for theater. So those are like the Broadway actors, the actors that go on national tours. Those are all equity shows. So you have to basically be a member of those unions in order to work in those shows. And same with
Really?
television. Like actors who want to become working television actors have to join SAG at some point. You get a couple freebies. They say, okay, you can do this one role, and then you can join after. We'll give you like a little taste of what it's like, and then you can join the union after and pay all those big union dues.
And
Um,
when did you do your first theater? Because it couldn't have been in college. It would have had to have started either in elementary, middle school, high school.
well, I mean, growing up, every school does their little like Thanksgiving play or whatever.
Yes.
It's not real Thanksgiving, but we won't get into that. But there was no fancy dinner back then. But I grew up in a very musical church, so I grew up
Okay.
singing a lot and started with music. And when my middle school was doing like a musical, I was like, well, that's cool. It's like you're playing characters. You're not just like singing a song. It's like you're acting too. That's cool. So I did that, and I did my first role in 8th grade in a show called Seussical, which is based on the Dr. Seuss stories. So the Cat in the Hat is in there, the Grinch is in there. I was Horton the elephant. He was like the lead, which was really cool. Um, but then I moved to a new town. So I was a pretty shy kid. I'm a pretty introverted person. I'm not like, once I warm up to people, I like open up and whatnot, but it's very hard for me to like start a conversation with the people. So like when I moved, I didn't my new high school did lots of theater. They did like one big show every spring, and I saw they were doing auditions, and they're always like, we need guys. Cause the early 2010s and 2000s, it's like if you do theater, they think certain things of you or whatever.
Yeah, I was born in 92. So yeah,
Yeah,
I completely understand that.
yeah.
I actually, if it wasn't for me being a narrator for a few plays when I was in a private school,
Mm,
most likely I still would have that mentality. But actually, no, because it is tough memorizing lines,
mm,
especially for a
yeah,
play in front of people. Like like you could touch them, and like
yeah,
it's like you really have to embody that, and then
yeah.
tonality, and then also rehearsal, of course, but like
Right.
tonality and everything like that. So I I understand the mind state you were stating, in a sense that
Yeah,
we need more boys, men to
yeah,
come join the theater. So I can understand that.
yeah. Like generally the girls they want to sing and they want to dance and they want to
Yeah.
do all this stuff, and the guys are like, "What? I don't want to dance. What are you talking about?" It's like, oh, it's nonsense. Um, but I was just too shy of a kid. I did an audition. I would always go to like the meeting, like that first announcement meeting, like, here's what you guys need to prepare, and I'm like, I'm out. Like I was just way too nervous. Was also just a giant nerd. I was a super nerdy, dorky kid, so also just didn't feel like I fit in. But I was in choir, so I still sang all throughout high school. And then, like my junior year, I did a show in a neighboring town in Stratford, um, called the Fairfield Follies, which they would do like 5 songs from like 5 different Broadway shows. So we did stuff from like In the Heights, we did stuff from West Side Story, from some older classic shows, a chorus line. So every year you got to do like different stuff, like different genres, and I always thought that was super cool. So I did that, and then my senior year, I finally did the big show at my high school. and I got one of the roles because again they needed guys. The show needed like 50 men. Didn't have that many. There were so many girls playing guys in that show. It was hilarious. And like the ensemble, like the male soldiers were just like girls with their hair tucked up in a ponytail and in a hat, so no one noticed. We all noticed. It's not like we're very well. These girls are trying to talk like super manly, and but it's like it's girls, so it's like
it's practice. It's practice. Yeah, and you're right.
Right, exactly.
You're right.
They did it. They were amazing dancers and were playing all these different roles throughout the show, so they were amazing. But eventually, when I was like applying for colleges, I was originally applying for criminal justice because being an actor and being part of an immigrant family, telling your very, very hardworking immigrant family that you're going to be an artist of any kind, they're like, what?
Yes.
What do you need to get like a job, like a real job? Like, my family fled. My parents fled El Salvador during like the Civil War in the 80s, and they came here and they worked very hard to get to where they are and to provide for me and my sister. And for you to then say, I'm going to major in this thing that is not a guaranteed job. There will not be a job waiting for me when I graduate. It's not like when you graduate nursing school, it's like, okay, you go apply at the hospital. Okay, we need nurses. Great. Here's your job. When can you start? But with actors, it's just constant risk, and you need all those survival jobs and the side hustles to pay your bills in the meantime. But I eventually went for it. I was getting good grades, and it wasn't until I got like my first paid gig that my parents were like, okay, he'll be fine. But I still always had those side jobs. But I worked with a lot of different really cool theater companies. In Bridgeport, there's the Downtown Cabaret that was very popular, still is very popular. The Bijou Theater, which I ended up working at for a while as well, and directed some of like the children's theater stuff. A couple other, popular groups. Thankfully, again, there was just lots of theater to do because of like we were so close to New York. It's like there's lots of actors here who also audition in New York, and they go back and forth. So then in college, it was a very straightforward drama program. Like there was no musical theater classes. They didn't do musicals. There was nothing musical involved. So I got to learn how to act for the first time.
Okay.
Like doing a play, not a musical, where like if there's a cello playing, it's going to help you feel sad. But when you're doing a play, there's no music. You can hear the audience like coughing and all of that. You can hear everything. So it really teaches you how to focus and how to discipline yourself and really like practice your lines. Because if you mess up your line, your stage partner is going to have to recover and try and give you a hint or try and recover the scene. And you just don't want to let all those people down that have worked harder than you at what they're doing and who are taking it seriously. So it's just very, very disciplined job. And then after years of doing theater in Connecticut from like 2011 to 2016, it was like 5 or 6 years. The Bijou Theater, where I worked and did lots of theater, they ended up, the owners at the time gave up their ownership. They couldn't afford to keep it open anymore. So we all lost like the place where we did like 4 to 5 shows a year. Like we loved performing there.
Yeah, I saw on your Instagram you did Take Me Out, and it looked like baseball.
Yeah.
I was always baseball, so it was like, oh, okay.
Yeah,
So
Take Me Out was a great experience. That arguably started my TV and on-camera career because one of our producers, so Take Me Out is a fairly newer play. It was on Broadway in like the early 2000s. It was like not like an old play, and it's about a baseball player who's biracial who comes out of the closet. He's like the star. He's like the Derek Jeter of his team. He's like the star.
He's the stud. Yeah.
Yeah, and he comes out, and one of his newer teammates is like homophobic, and a whole bunch of fans are sending hate mail, and it's about like racism and homophobia and masculinity, and how guys in the locker room didn't feel comfortable around him all of a sudden, and just all this different stuff. Really great show. But one of our producers was working on like the journalism side of entertainment for like over 40 years. He's my mentor. He's a dear friend of mine, Ed Martin. And we had a
say that again. You kind of cut out. Say his name again because it kind of cut out. Ed DeMarian.
Ed Martin.
Ed Martin. Okay.
Yeah.
Ed Martin.
So we had just a very young, diverse cast because of the show, and he saw us and was like, there's something here. This is kind of what Hollywood needs. And he was sort of very involved in that side. He knew all like the publicists and knew all of the executives at like all these big TV networks and Fox and CBS and all that. So he started like trying to organize meetings for us to meet some of these people to sort of get us involved in the TV side of stuff. And that eventually led me getting an audition for Blindspot, which is an NBC show that I worked
Great
on.
show.
I did.
Great show. Great show, Mr. Agent Woods.
It was a really, really cool experience. That show was very good to me. So I ramble a lot, as you guys can tell. But that's why I started my own podcast. I was like, I need somewhere to talk. Before I took my boyfriend's ear off.
Same exact thing.
He just gestured at me. He's like, oh.
My girlfriend's the same way. It's like, yo, you talk, you just rant. You need to learn how to stop. So it's like, okay, got my podcast. How was, because you talk about, I know there was a podcast where you had one of your co-stars, another actor that acted with you in Blindspot, and you guys talk about Ennis.
Yes, rich.com. Ennis
yes.
Esmer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, you say he's like one of your favorite. He was very good. I wanted to know if there's any like funny stories or any type of feedback or any type of compliments that you got. And I'm guessing he would be one of the main ones, since you said like he's one of your favorite. And I'm guessing there's things that you might have, I don't know, but like saw him do or was doing that you probably used it as your own. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. So, for those who watched the show, you may remember Rich.com was like a sort of a one-off character in like one episode.
Yeah.
He was like a villain type character. He was a hacker. He was like the dark web hacker or whatever, and looked kind of unassuming and goofy, but he also would shoot you in the face if he had to protect himself. So he's just kind of like the nerd with the kind of twisted background or whatever. So he was such a popular character, like a fan favorite. I think they brought him back later in season 1, or for another episode in season 2, they had to like take him out of prison to help with the case. So this is like the ultimate goal for any actor, like for you to do such a good job in like your one episode that they bring you back and they keep bringing you back. So in season 3, he was like a consultant for like the FBI. So he was in like half of the episodes for season 3. And then season 4, he was a regular. So series regular is like the majority of actors like goal. It's either to be the lead in a film franchise, so you have like that job security and it's not just like one movie. It's like, nope, I've got multiple movies. Or a series regular, which means that you're one of the stars of the show. You are in every episode, and you're like contracted to work X amount of months per year. So it's just that job security, and you get to do what you love, So for me, the goal for me is to be a series regular on a show.
Okay.
Don't know what kind of show. I'll take whatever they give me. But yeah, so Rich, or Ennis, he plays Rich.com. They're the same person, because Ennis Esmer is just such a funny character. It's such a funny actor that he's also done a ton of comedy. There's a lot of Canadian actors on the show. He was in Schitt's Creek, which is like blew up this past year, like was such a big show, like won like every comedy Emmy award. It's on Netflix now if anyone wants to watch Schitt's Creek, but he played like one of the lead's boyfriends, I think, for a couple episodes. He was on a ton of other, shows all over like Canadian TV. But he was just such a funny actor. He was so kind. My first episode, that was my first TV booking. I'd only done a couple of short films, and it was, when you're doing a short film, it's small. It's very small scale. It's like you've got your camera person, the director, and your sound guy. Maybe there's like an assistant somewhere, but the crew is like 4 people. You're probably filming it in someone's apartment, because you obviously can't afford to like build this whole set for this 20-minute film or this 5-minute film. So then walking onto this set, and I'd worked on it as an extra on a bunch of other shows before, just to get some experience and know what a professional set looks like. But then walking onto the set of the lab, it's a fake lab. The whole FBI set is on like this massive warehouse size soundstage in the studio in Brooklyn.
Wow.
And a whole bunch of different shows filmed there, in movies and stuff, which is crazy. Like they filmed like parts of The Greatest Showman there in New York. Yeah, they filmed a whole bunch. There's like posters in the studios of like all the stuff that's filmed there. It's like, holy crap, like the history of this place is insane. But you know, it's just so daunting as like kind of a not a new actor, but new to TV. You're used to theater where it's like you have weeks of rehearsal and all of this, but with this it's like, okay, we're doing like a couple takes and then that's it, camera's off you, we're switching to the other angle to look at the other characters, so you only have a couple of takes to like get the performance you want, and to get your lines out, because then everything else, when they flip the camera, it's not on you. They're only using those couple of takes, it's on you. So at one point I was a little nervous. I like flubbed my line. It was a lot of technical jargon because I played a lab tech in the FBI. It's funny, I started as Lab Tech Woods, was like my first official credit, and then Agent Woods just became who I was later. I'm like, oh, I'm an agent now. I'm not a lab tech. Okay, I got promoted. Cool. But Ennis was just very kind because I flubbed my line, and he was like, hey, like, I don't know. Like, he's like, I don't know. Because I think I'd worked as an extra on the show on that show first as an extra for a while. I was like, an FBI extra. So I was a familiar face. So, you know, when I walked on set and I was like, oh, or they said like, hey guys, this is Juan, he's playing Agent Woods. And we did our rehearsal and it was like, hey buddy, what's up? Like, congrats. Like, you know, it was just very sweet. He's very attentive to like everything going on. So then I like flubbed my line and he was like, hey, like, don't worry about it. Just, you know, I think I messed up my line when the camera wasn't on me anymore because they filmed my coverage first, like my angle, and they switched it and I like messed up my line and whatever. And he was like, hey, at this point, they're just getting our reactions. Like, don't worry about like perfection. They got your stuff already. Just like, you know, take a breath. It's all good. You know, don't overthink it. And I was like, okay, I won't overthink it, you know? And yeah, he's just such a cool guy. And having worked on the show before as an extra, hearing his like improv, because they write him as a funny character too. It's not like a funny actor in a serious role. He's just funny.
Okay.
They would write him such good dialogue. And then they'd say, hey, Ennis, for this last take, just improv a bunch of stuff. So just watching him come up with this stuff off the top of his head, I'm like, holy crap. Like, I wish I was that good at improv to like elevate the comedy, because he was like the comedic relief, you know? It's a very dark, sort of serious FBI show. And
very dark.
Yeah.
Very dark.
Like terrorism threats and bombs and explosions and
just the first episode. I'm getting goosebumps just talking about it. Like, just the first episode was insane.
Yeah. I rewatched the first episode with my boyfriend Izzy because he hadn't seen the show. He'd only ever like seen like my clips of me on the show. He's like, mind you, it's funny, whenever I would like be on another episode, I'd like post about it on my Instagram, and I'd always get texts like, hey, you did a great job. I have no idea what's happening, but you look great. Because it's like, it's not like Law and Order where it's like the case of the week and there's no big storyline. With Blindspot, if you blink, you're gonna miss like everything. 10 different clues.
Oh yeah, everything. There's Easter eggs all over.
Wait, what happened? Who died in that explosion? What's happening? There's another tattoo. You know. For those who don't know, the main character is covered in tattoos, and they each are a clue to a terrorism threat. And at one point, they find a whole other layer of like glow-in-the-dark tattoos, basically. Oh, season 3.
Yeah,
that's when they're like, "Oh, we're running out of tattoos. How do
we extend this
more?"
It is a great show, though.
Oh, it was a great show.
It's a great show.
Like I said, it was very, very good to me. I got to work on 4 episodes. I got to join SAG because of the show. Like I said, they kind of give you a freebie. So I did the first episode, and they said like, you're eligible to join. And everyone, you know, some people are eager to join because for whatever reason they think like, oh, now agents are gonna want to get me, and now I'm gonna get auditioned. It's like, nope. A casting director still has to know who you are. And you know, doors are not magically gonna open just because you join the union. It's just like I said, it's that job security and that protection, and whatnot. Like, but of course, like once you join the union, you can't do non-union stuff anymore because it's like you can only do the stuff that's protected. So that's also why it's important for actors, if there are any actors out there listening, to not rush to join the union, because you have to build up your resume. You want to get a lot of experience. Your demo reel, which is like, all the clips of the stuff you've done to show the work you've done. And if you join the union too soon and you don't book any work because you can't do the non-union stuff, you're kind of like shooting yourself in the foot, because then it's like you can't do the short films, you can't do the student films and work with all these like film school director students, who need actors constantly for their projects, because a lot of them, they have to write and shoot a short film like every month. That's how they practice. um and there's lots of like smaller projects like local commercials and certain social media, like the web series and stuff, all that stuff that actors want to book as much as they can before they join, so that they have enough, like, hey agent, here's why I should be a client of yours, because look at all this stuff I've booked on my own. If you rush to join the union, it kind of can backfire on you. For some people it hasn't, but for the majority, I know a lot of people who like regret joining too soon. Yeah, it's just,
it's always good.
I could talk about this stuff forever. That's why I started my podcast. I love talking about the business. I really do.
Yeah, that's a good segue to your podcast. Because I was thinking, let's go ahead and divert to your podcast, because I know we went to Ennis and other stuff. I do want to get back to that, so I actually have it written down. But let's talk about your podcast real quick. Sure. It's called Actors with Issues. I really like it because I feel like it gives a teaching aspect for actors. Myself, because what you talked about, I mean, you talked about non-disclosure agreements about The Punisher. That's a question I have for you. But you also talk about like you want to direct your own, or direct your own short film. You also talk about like there was one, give me 1 second here. Auditioning.
Thank you for listening, by the way.
Oh yeah, definitely. Oh no, I do. I'm a podcast fiend. I'd rather listen to a podcast than watch anything else. I'm like that. Yeah.
Yeah. When I work out, I'm listening to a podcast. I'm not like listening to music pumping me up. I'm listening to like the Office ladies with the two actors from The Office, or
Oh, they have Rogan a podcast?
Yeah. Oh, it's amazing.
Oh, okay.
It's Jenna Fisher, who plays Pam, and Angela Kinsey, who plays Angela. They're best friends in real life, and every week they're breaking down an episode of the show. So they started, this is fairly new. I think it's only been going for like a year or so. In a year, if you do weekly, that's 50 episodes. They did over 200 episodes of The Office. So, God, that's a 4-year commitment you're doing.
Oh no, I know what it is. The Office is taking me out of depressed land sometimes. So
I've rewatched that show so many times. I forced my boyfriend to watch it. He likes it.
Oh, he does? It's funny. It's so good.
Yeah. It's just such good writing, such good acting.
That's what she said. Who's your favorite character on there?
Oh God. That's a hard question.
It is.
I mean, probably my favorite major character is probably Michael. Just because if you like watch the pilot and then watch his last episode, not like the finale, but Michael's last episode.
Yeah.
It's just the character progression is so, it's for everybody. Like Pam used to be super shy and quiet, and she got all this confidence because she's now married to the guy she loves, and all these characters go. Dwight is the only person who's like exactly the same from the first episode to the last one. He's Dwight Schrute, and that's it. But Michael, he goes through all this learning and growing, and he can be cringy at times, but that's kind of the point, is that he doesn't know he's cringy, and everyone else is like, Michael, you can't say that, that's racist or whatever. It's like you kind of learn from it. It's not just, oh, he's racist and everyone thinks he's hilarious, because everyone's like, that's not cool.
It's not.
But yeah, I really like Michael, and I also love Jan for the same reason. Her story arc was ridiculous. And Ryan and Kelly are just so funny together.
They're the best together. Yeah. Ryan is hilarious.
So funny.
Oh man,
her character too. Her character started as like this sort of uptight, quiet, shy girl, and she ends up being like, she loves fashion and Beyonce. And,
the most talkative person ever.
Yeah. Ryan, just tell me you love me. It's like, oh my God.
So, back to their podcast.
That's why my show is like an hour long.
Oh, my show. I think the longest episode I've done was 3 hours, 3 to 4 hours. Yeah, but yeah,
I'm almost
was...
scared to make my episodes that long because I feel like people won't listen. It's already tough getting. I'm sure you know how it is. It's tough getting an audience and the numbers you want.
It's
But
all
it's like,
about
well, I
consistency.
listen.
It's all
Yeah.
about
Oh,
consistency. You just
absolutely.
got to keep doing it.
Yeah.
You listen to Joe Rogan, I'm guessing.
Mm-hmm.
So Bill
I
Burr,
have.
yeah,
Yeah.
you have. Okay, yeah, that's what got me into it. Like I think in 2017 is when I actually like started. No, 2015 is when I actually started listening to Joe Rogan, and then I listened to hours and hours and hours and hours. And I think I think in your first episode, the actor that you interviewed, he said, you know how you say you become a master when you do something for 10,000 hours or plus.
Something like that. Yeah.
Something like that. So I have 10,000 hours of just listening to podcasts, listening to other people, and it's funny because I thought I knew it until you actually like set up the whole situation, the mics, everything, and then it's like, oh, okay, I don't know nothing. This is more. So yeah, I know what you mean on that one.
And with Joe, it's funny because he one of the recent interviews I heard him do, not recent, it was the one with Robert Downey Jr. Such a great episode.
Such a great episode.
But he said like he's never paid for advertising for his show.
Mm-hmm.
He's never spent money on marketing. He just kept doing it and just would call his comedian friends. And sure, it helps when you're Joe Rogan and let's say like, I don't know, Whitney Cummings or another comedian. Like if you do an episode
Sarah
with
Silverman,
right, they have their own following. So one Instagram post, you're gonna get several thousand people to tune in. Well, with me, I've got a couple thousand followers on Instagram. It's like I'm lucky to get 20 people to listen to my show.
Well, we're on the same boat. We're on the same boat.
Some episodes do better than others. I'll admit that. It depends on who the guest is and how much they advertise it to.
It's a conglomerate, and that's one thing I like about podcasts. It's about helping each other out. So like you're coming on my podcast. I know I'm not an actor, but now I know I'm not an actor, but I know one of my friends, he has a 4K camera, and since I'm very good when it comes to like the audio aspect, he wants to do a short film, like skits. So like that's something we've wanted to do in Florida, and I know he has some scripts that he's been writing. I've been writing a little fan fiction here and there, but so like this is kind of like, to me, this is fake because I wasn't expecting an actor. So I was like kind of nervous. I was like, oh my God, this is an actor. Oh my God. Like, what can I really ask him? I don't know if I could ask him anything. And you know what I'm saying? But it's always like
I'm not
famous
enough to get canceled, so don't worry about your questions.
Please don't say that. You're famous in my book. I'm not gonna lie. You're famous in my book. Like seriously, like I mean, just because of what you've accomplished. Like you need to understand, like to me, especially with your personality, like your personality in a sense of the way you speak, especially when you talk with the interviews on your podcast, the Actors with Issues, you're very energetic. You're very like you really want to learn, but then you also want to explain, and then you also want to teach. So it's like a full, like it paints a picture in my head. Not only that, you're very eloquent when you speak. Like it's very understandable, relatable as well. So sorry, I could go on and on. I do apologize, but that's something that it's really amazing. And I mean, just consistency. I mean, I'm very proud. I'm really excited and glad. Thank you for taking the time to be on my podcast, for real. Definitely would love to be on yours. We don't have to talk about acting, even though I could tell you about my narrator back in elementary. Don't know. It was a Christmas play, but
I've got a couple other podcast ideas. I don't know how I'm gonna do it because I as we mentioned before, every actor should have a survival job. I'm not a big fan of the starving artist mentality where they're just like, no, I'm gonna struggle for my art. I'm like, God, we struggle enough already. Do we have to keep doing this?
Correct.
So I work full time at a gym at the moment. So it's like I try and plan my podcast where it can be sort of sustainable. Because there have been a couple times that I will skip putting an episode up a week because I'm just like so exhausted or preoccupied doing other things that I can't sit in for a couple hours and edit. Or like I'll work 9 hours at the gym and I wanted to spend time with my boyfriend after my shift. I'm like, I don't want to sit at a desk for 3 hours and edit a 1 hour interview, you know? So finding the time to do all these podcasts, like the actor who I interviewed my very first episode, Alec Tincher, is one of my dearest friends. Love him to death. We have an idea for a podcast, and we wanted to do it, but we've just kept like mention it like, oh, we should do it, and then it just doesn't happen because it's like finding the time with someone else to do things consistently is also tricky.
Yes.
But like I said, I love interviewing people. I love talking with people. So there's a couple other podcast ideas I want, not necessarily like sort of like non-acting related, but just sort of conversations. Like I don't want there to be like a theme, just like talking, because there's so many people I've met like you who like have stories to share and have things to say and just like shoot the shit with them. And you know, I don't know if I can swear, sorry.
No, you cursing
I'm
everything.
Sure I've sweared
everything
17 times already. I feel like I did. But you know, it's just like when you're a creative person, you want to just like create, whether it's just creating a conversation. I don't necessarily want to write 1,000 scripts and put a lot of money into stuff and sell it to studios. I admire the people that do that, but I can't. It's just so much. I've written several scripts and I wanted to like produce my own stuff, but it's just a big commitment. And when you're living with your partner and you're paying your own rent and already working full time, like where are you going to find the time to
in Brooklyn, New York? Well, so I have to I have to add that. I'm in Florida. The cost of living is definitely like, so I could understand that.
Yeah, and it's just hard to commit to it's just hard to commit to such a big endeavor, because short films, you know, you as an actor who has done a lot of stuff for free and no longer does things for free just because that's the position I'm in now. I'm in the union. They have to pay you. That's kind of the perk of being in the union.
Congratulations, by the way. Didn't know if you were in not, but okay. Which one?
Thanks to
You're in both?
Spot.
You're in both?
No, just the TV one. I haven't done any equity theater. I don't qualify for that one yet.
Okay.
I'd like to one day. I haven't done any theater in New York. I've only done theater in Connecticut. Once I got to New York, it's just like, let's focus on TV because that's what's working for me right now. So let's do that.
Correct.
Not a dancer. So the big Broadway musicals, and I have no formal dance training. So that's kind of out of my league a little bit. There's a lot of very amazing dancers out there. They can do it. They need an actor. They need a nerdy actor. I'll do it. I'll go in. You know, if I were to produce something, I want to make sure everyone is compensated for their time, you know, even if it's like $150 for the day or something like that, $200 for the day, whatever it is. If I'm going to ask people to dedicate an entire day and take a day off of work, I want to make sure they're taken care of. It's not like, hey, we're going to just put this thing together. It's like, no, I want to do this right. And because if someone were to ask me to take a day off of work where I work full time to go work on their short film, I would hope that there would be some sort of compensation, because you're asking people to donate their time, you know?
Correct.
And it's, you know, I've done a lot of that. I've done several short films and whatnot, and hope to in 2021 produce one of the many that I've written, or at least pitch it to people who would potentially buy it, because that's a big thing writers do too. They sell their scripts for a good chunk of change and you know, make their living that way. But it's just stuff I haven't explored yet that I really want to delve into. But again, with a full-time job and paying relationship, it's hard to do that.
How many scripts you have currently?
Oh God. There's a comedy series that I've written 2 episodes and have 6 episodes planned out, or 8 episodes planned out. I don't remember. It's been a minute since I've opened them up again because of time.
Yeah.
And there's like 2 or 3 other short films that have like outlines for, started writing them. I just haven't found the time to finish them. Which I've also realized, and a couple writers have told me, that you just have to set a deadline for yourself, and not just like, oh, we'll shoot this eventually. But if it's like, no, like this has to be done by this point so you can shoot at this point. And submit it to all these film festivals, because that's how that works. Once you do a short film, if you want to gain recognition, it's not just like uploading it to YouTube and hoping you get some like ad revenue, because that's very, very hard to do in the first place with YouTube. Like you have to get thousands and thousands of views to make $1.
Yeah,
So it's like, is it worth
it,
it? You put
it
how many
was a
thousands
thousand.
into it?
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
1,000, and then they raised it up because of
Yeah,
the
it's
popularity.
ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
It's insane. That's insane. How much it sort of limited that for these poor content creators, you know. But the film festival circuit is a big thing. It's what people do a lot. They'll submit it. There's a website called Film Freeway that just, it's like the main hub where all of these filmmakers and you know, creators will submit their short film to festivals that match their film. If it happens to center on like a gay couple, then they can submit it to all of the LGBTQ plus themed film festivals, like the Pride Festival that's happening every year. Not talking about the parade, talking about
No, the festival. Yeah. I understand.
Right.
I understand.
Yeah.
For the listeners, for the listeners, for you guys.
Yeah, and there's other ones geared towards certain topics. Like there's like film festivals that have to do with mental health and mental health awareness. So if someone writes a film with a character who's struggling with anxiety, they'll submit it to that. Or during COVID, they were encouraging filmmakers to make stuff during COVID. Like they said, like you have to promise that you will be filming this with people you live with, or who, you know, like don't go out of your way to make something super ambitious while it's dangerous to do that. So there was like literally like the quarantine film festival and the COVID film festival, submissions from all over the world. You know, a lot of people who did stuff like with their neighbor who also happened to be an actor, or their two actor roommates and their boyfriend or their girlfriend who's like an editor or whatever. It was just a time for a lot of people to create stuff, which was really cool. But that's kind of like one of the many ways that I don't like using the word aspiring, because if you do something, you are that. You're not aspiring to do it. If you act, you're an actor, not you're an aspiring actor. But that a lot of budding, I guess, filmmakers sort of get their name out there by like winning smaller festival awards, and it gets recognized. Like the big ones people know about is like the Cannes Film Festival in France. There's like the Vienna Film Festival. There's the South by Southwest. You know, there's all these different ones from like around the country and around the world.
Yeah.
That helps people get their work out there, because a lot of times there's like executives from like Sony or Paramount or, you know, these big studios, and they'll be like, hey, we want to buy your film and give it a theatrical release. That's how they kind of make their money back, and then some, because, you know, if it costs you $10,000 to make a film, you're getting $100,000 contract or whatever.
Yeah. It's investing in yourself. It's investing in yourself. Yeah, it's value. It's value. Yeah. And you said it's very tough when it comes to editing the podcast. And yes, I do it, especially when it comes to like just an hour podcast. It takes 3 hours, anywhere between, and if it's 2 hours, for me, it takes 4. I think, yeah. I mean, and I've done everything. I've done from created the logo. I've done the audio production, all of it to try to get it where it's at. So I've had some sleepless nights.
Yeah. Yeah. It's it's one-man team over here too for my show. I am DMing people on Instagram, actors that I follow, or if someone announces that they just booked something, or like, oh, my episode of this is airing tonight, then I'll hit them up. I'll DM them on Instagram, or, you know, some actors have their own website, like I do. So on their Instagram, it'll say like email, because they listed it, or they'll put their website. So I'll go on their website and contact them through there. You know, there've been a lot of, I was left on read or left on seen a lot on Instagram, just because people see it and they're just like, I won't do a podcast.
Yeah.
But, you know, after the first 10 to 12 episodes, I knew or worked with like definitely the first like 5 or 6 guests in some capacity, and some people later that I had on the show later. But like once I got to like episode 10, I was like, oh God, who am I going to talk to? Like, who's left? Like, because like I know all these actors, but I wanted to mainly talk about people's like on set experience and their audition experience, and how they do. Like imposter syndrome is something that comes up a lot, because a lot of times, you know, we book something and we think, oh my God, who let this happen? you'd think you're not like worthy, but then you're like, no, I worked my ass off for this. I went to college, I'm trained, I have my own reps, I booked all these things by myself, and I finally got this TV gig. Like, why would I not deserve this? You know, something a lot of actors deal with, is feeling like they don't deserve what they're getting. And things like self-esteem and audition anxiety and how they
Which is
prep for
big.
things.
Audition anxiety is big.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's I can't say what the project is, but and I didn't move forward because it's been a while since the audition went out. But I had my second series regular audition. I had to memorize 9 pages of dialogue in less than 48 hours.
What?
They gave it to me like 10 p.m. and they said this is due day after tomorrow morning. So I had like one full day to look through all of the dialogue. It was 3 scenes. It was a lot. And like as an actor, it's not just like you have to be good at acting, you have to be good at auditioning. They're 2 very different things. Because if you're, you know, being a lot of people who are actors are great actors, they're phenomenal actors. Um, with
Horrible
theater,
at
you get
auditioning, right? Horrible at auditioning.
it's tricky because like with musical theater, you have to bring a song. Usually it's just bring an up-tempo song, it's like a fast song, or bring a ballad, which is slower, contemporary, so modern, or classical, like some of the older stuff, like from like Phantom of the Opera or some of the older shows, as opposed to like Hamilton or Dear Evan Hansen, like those shows that came out within the last 5 years.
Correct.
The very modern pop sounding ones. So you select those songs yourself. You have your binder of like 10 audition songs, so you have a variety. Um, and you're preparing it. So you're pre-prepared. You've been working on this song for months, if not years. You've gotten like voice lessons and all of that. And then with theater, um, you know, in the process of theater, you're rehearsing for weeks, if not
Correct.
months, depending on the show. Professional theater, it's usually like 4 to 5 weeks, and then they start performing. With community in local theater, sometimes it's like 2 to 3 months, which is ridiculous. Never understood why we rehearsed for so long. I don't miss that. It's like rehearsing for 3 months for a weekend of shows. I'm like, what? All of that for a weekend?
Perfection is perfection.
And then it's still like a shit show sometimes. Opening night, people don't know the lines. I'm like, what's happening? um, you know, but then with TV, you get these auditions and it's like, you've got a couple days, or this is due tomorrow. And, you know, when you have your, sort of the way that roles are structured is in television, at least, there's a co-star, which means that it's basically the lowest billing or credit you could have as a speaking role.
Okay.
And then there's the guest star, which is bigger. They're usually like a focal point of the episode. And then there's like the series regular / star of the show. So if you watch like Law and Order Special Victims Unit, you know, the opening credits, it'll have like each card for like Mariska Hargitay and Ice-T and all these people. They're the stars of the show. They're the regulars. They work on every episode. Then once the show starts, it'll say like guest starring whoever, because they're like the victim of that episode, or
Correct.
they're like the new lawyer or whatever. They've got a bunch of scenes, or in several. They've worked maybe several days on the show. Then at the end of the show, when the credits are rolling, it'll say co-starring, and it's usually a whole bunch of names. Because in a show like Law and Order, it's like the soccer coach they interviewed, the mother, the neighbor who found the body, the cop on the street, the bodega owner, you know, all of these people that worked on the show for like a couple hours in reality, and then they got to go home after a day of filming. So, you know, with the co-star roles, they're quick. It's usually one scene. You might have a couple lines. Sometimes you're just auditioning for the role of a waiter who says, "Can I get you a cup of coffee?" or whatever, or anything else for you guys, or here's your check, or, you know, just a line. Sometimes these are one-line auditions. Those are easy. You got 2 days to do that. You could do it in an hour because it's a line. You know, it takes longer to set up your ring light and your and your sound equipment and your tripod than it does to actually do your audition. But then when you get like the guest star roles or the series regular auditions, where it's like multiple scenes, a ton of dialogue, and you don't always get a week. Sometimes you do. If they're nice, they'll give you a week, but sometimes it's literally a couple days. And if you're working the following day, you've like, you know, looking at your script while you're at work, and on your break, you're going over stuff, and trying to get coached by someone over the phone or over Zoom or something really quick while you're at work. Because it's literally what happened to me. Again, they sent it to me at like 10 p.m. I was working the following day and it was due the following morning.
That's tough.
So I
That's
was like, oh
tough.
God, all right, well, coaches are available and of course it's last minute. So people are like, sorry, I'm already booked or I can't or whatever. So you're just reaching out to your actor buddies like, dude, can you give me some notes? Like I need to learn how to break this down fast. Because again, in certain aspects, you're spoiled by how much time you get to prepare. But with
Correct.
TV and film auditioning, it's very short period. And even when you're on set, they're filming anywhere from 3 to like 8 scenes per day.
What?
Yeah. So an episode of television, if it's a 1-hour show, it takes 8 days to film one episode.
8 days. Okay, so it is a week.
Filming.
So it is a week.
About, yeah. They usually film Monday through Friday, but it's 8 days. It's about a week. If it's a half-hour show, it takes 4 to 5 days. Like if it's like a half-hour comedy, like The Office or something. But they're usually
and that's just, and you're talking, all right. So because me personally, like, so you're, and that's just when the actors are there filming camera action, 4 days of just that.
Right, because
for 30 minutes. For 30 minutes, but yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
And there's usually not men. There's like a rehearsal on set with the director. You'll run through the lines. Like I'm just trying to think of like what we did in a Blindspot. So, you know, actors are there. You do a quick rehearsal with the director. He just gives you like a quick note, like, hey, maybe do that a little slower. Like, hey, this is a little more emotional than we thought. So just, you know, try and get ready for that. Or let's dial it back a little too much. Or whatever. Like, hey, that's supposed to be like a punchline of a joke. So make that a little bit, try and like land that line a little funnier if you can. You know, they give you like a quick generic note. But if you've been working on a show for several episodes, or, you know, if you're a new show and you've been working on it for several episodes, you know who your character is, you know where your performance is. There's not much to change. And then with shows that have been on for years and years, the director is focusing more on the camera work as opposed to the performance, because you know who your character is. You've been playing them for years, possibly. Or they're just very well written. There's no notes to give because the dialogue is so good. You just have to like nail the dialogue.
Correct.
But you know, it in a day, because there's so many moving parts, you'll have that one rehearsal with the director, and then they'll say, okay, actors, go take a break really quick, and then they'll start putting lights up, moving the sound equipment, all these moving parts. The prop department comes in because they know what they have to put up where. Actors are getting their makeup touched up, they're grabbing a snack, they're running over their lines for that really long scene they're about to film. Because like on Blindspot, I was in scenes with like 5 or 6 other actors. It was never like a one-on-one, because it was just, that wasn't what my character called for. There was one episode I was with Ashley, who played Patterson, and with Ennis, who was Rich.com.
Is this the demo? Was this the scene in the demo reel? In your demo reel?
Yes.
The blonde one.
Where they
it's
catch
the blonde
them
one.
chatting. Yes.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
Ashley,
Yes.
So
you just come in. You just come in and you're like I'm the hacker.
Them kind of.
Yeah.
Because they're talking about something secretive or whatever, and Anna's like, "Do you have any idea what'll happen if someone?" And then I come in and he's like, "Oh, hi, Agent Woods, hi." You know, and he's like trying to hide what was on the screen and typing, and I'm like, "What's happening?" And I'm like, I did the thing you asked. Here's information you needed. And then it just goes to the next scene.
Yeah.
That one scene, I was there for like 3/4 of a day, because they need you to be, while you're getting your hair and makeup and your wardrobe fitting and all of that stuff, and you're just hanging out in your dressing room, they're filming other stuff. They're filming the scenes you're not in.
Okay.
So they just want to be efficient with time. They want, like, by the time they finish the previous scene, you have to be 100% ready. Your hair is done, your makeup is on, your mic is on, your clothes is on, everything, you know, you're completely ready to be as efficient as they can. Not every show is like that. I've been on some sets that's like, why is this taking so long? You know, you hear of like, I've never experienced it, but there's stories of like actors refusing to like leave their trailer or whatever because you're being a diva or something happened and like the camera's not working, so they have to figure out how to fix that. It's a lot. Most of the time it's technical stuff. It's like, guys, we have to rehearse this one camera move because if we don't get it, it's not going to look good. We have to get this shot. Especially that show had such big sets and like hallways and stuff that if they're on like a steady cam where the cameraman is like holding it and walking and moving back, it's not just like on a tripod or like on a slider where it's moving around. It's like all this technical stuff. They have to make sure that there's no crew members visible when they turn the camera. There isn't like a light stand or very obvious like fake light bulb off to the side or whatever. Just all these
or
different
reflection. Yeah, anything that could be
Yeah.
interrupting the shot or interrupting the environment of that scene.
Right. With that show, reflections is a big thing because it was like in an FBI office. So there's like glass panels and they build it in a way that you can like tilt the panels a little bit ever so slightly so that you can cheat the reflections. That was really cool to see. And I'll be watching shows sometimes and I'll point out to my boyfriend and I'm like, look at that glass panel in the back. See how tilted that is? You know, it's like I point it all out and he's so annoyed sometimes because it's like I'm like breaking the magic or whatever. And I'm like, that's a fake set. That elevator's not going anywhere. Those are fake. There's a guy behind the wall pushing the doors closed. That is not like in Blindspot, that big elevator. Is that real?
It's
what
not.
Elevator is that side? No.
That office is awesome. I'm not gonna lie. That office is like, wow, this is like, honestly, when I saw it, it was like, yo, this is great production and the drama behind
huge.
Oh yeah.
That set was massive. Yeah. But like that set had all these hallways that connected to the lab. So that was all just like a massive set. There was like the big office in the middle, the smaller side offices, the interrogation room, the psychology room, the lab.
And all of it's right there. All of it's
actually connected. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And then like there was a couple apartments that were built on the set and it would have this backdrop of like the Brooklyn Bridge so that it looks like, and it's like a frosted window so that when you're outside you can like see the lights of the bridge or whatever.
Yeah.
It's just to make it as convenient as possible because it's like, you know, you film things off season as well. They film things very ahead of time. So like the episode of For Life that I worked on, we filmed that right after the holidays, like early January. So it's been about 6 weeks.
Okay.
And I've worked on shows where you're doing outdoor stuff, but they're like, oh, this episode's coming out in the summertime, but right now it's March. But it's coming out in the summer, so everyone has to be dressed in summer clothing in the middle of March in New York, where it's still like 50 degrees, and they want you in tank tops and swimsuits and all that stuff.
Models go through that
on the
too.
Beach where it's super windy.
Oh yeah. Oh my goodness.
Oh yeah. Poor models and the commercial actors, they go through that shit all the time because a lot of times that comes out like months and months later. So that's thankfully Blindspot. Everything I did was interior except for the finale where we were filming in Times Square.
Okay.
Also freezing because it was November in Times Square. But
November in Times Square?
Yeah, it was freezing. Super like in the middle of the night. It was like midnight when we finally filmed because they had to wait for the sun to go down and for tourists to kind of dissipate so they could control the set. Yeah, and there was like stunt driving, like we were in SUVs and they're like sort of swerving up to the curb, so they had to plan that, like they had to like close off the block so no one gets hit by a car, no idiot pedestrian or whatever. Yeah, again, there's just so much that goes into it. They have to have all of this stuff ready so when the actors get on set, it's like, okay, we can start, and they're not just waiting around and the clock is ticking because they're getting paid. You know, you go overtime, it's a lot of money. You know, you go overtime, it's time and a half. It's actors getting paid time and a half. They try and avoid that at all costs. That's a lot of money.
Yeah, they try to make everything as efficient as possible, especially since you're unionized. Because of the union, they will enforce those strict rules because those are long hours. Long hours. So I could understand because in one of your episodes, I have a question about the set.
Sure.
Let me go back, but let me just write it down. Give me 1 second time. I have a question about the set. You, as it would be co-star, correct? Or you have a
recurring, but
recurring co-star.
Yeah. So, like I said, it's the different roles is co-star, guest star, series regular, and then for co-star or guest star, you can then throw recurring in there if you've played the same character for more than one episode. Sometimes people come back as a completely different character and they just like, you know, give them a wig or makeup or or whatever to make them look different. It's happened. If you watch Law and Order, you're like, wasn't this detective like a bad guy a couple seasons ago, and now he's like a series regular? Happens in Law and Order, especially all the time. It's really funny. But yes, what was your question about the set? Sorry.
No, on the set, when it comes to like yourself, when it comes to you like yourself, are you in a trailer or are you in an area where they have different co-stars? Is it something like that? Because I figured the guest star, because the guest star is usually someone like a movie star or someone that's been doing a lot of things. And then you have the main actors, the ones that are always in every shot and everything. I figured they would have trailers. Do you guys get that accommodation too? Or is there like a room, or is there like, I'm guessing it goes into this question in the sense of time and efficiency. Cause I know you spoke about like, there's a lot of actors that they put a lot of hard work. They try to memorize their lines. Yeah. It's trying to be time and efficient. So you don't want like a background person or someone, not just a background person or a person that's works with the set or the audio equipment, not quiet, not being respectable or respectful. I think you especially saw the Joker. I forget his name. How can I forget his name? Where he's
Joaquin Phoenix.
Joaquin Phoenix. I don't know if you saw the video where I'm trying to figure this out. He's arguing with the people in the behind the stage, behind the cameras. I don't know if you.
I haven't seen that one.
Oh yeah, there's a video. Joaquin Phoenix of trying to get this part of a role, like to get this scene, and people in the background are talking and everything like that, and he gets mad, and there's a video of it, like him going off. Yeah, I figured.
I've experienced that so many times.
You have? Okay.
Yeah. As an extra, when I was working as an extra, there was a lot of times that the crew was talking, and then they'd be like, "Background, be quiet." Like it's like we're so quiet over here. It's your crew behind the wall chatting it up about the game on Monday night. Like go yell at your crew. And there have been times that like the stars of the show would be like, it's not them guys, they're not talking. Like it's the crew. Go talk to your crew, assistant director, go talk to your crew. Like you're in charge of them. You have PAs and production assistants in charge of the background. The background's being quiet because we're all adults. We're all there to work, and we know that we can get kicked off a set. We know that we can get sent home. The crew, they're contracted. So there's almost like sometimes, not with everybody, it's very few that happens with, but sometimes a sense of entitlement. If you're contracted to be there, or you're in your union as well, because the crews also have unions, for the same reason, so that they're compensated fairly, and health insurance, all the grown-up stuff, pension, all that stuff.
Correct.
But I've experienced that quite a bit. I've never seen an actor blow up on any set that I've ever worked on. I've never seen an actor yell at anyone. There's a couple times that I think it was like the 12th hour of the shoot. Some shows shoot for up to 16 hours, which is insane. But it was like the 12th hour. It was like almost 1 a.m. One of the actors was like, she was just like, guys, we got the shot. Can we please move on? Like, can we please move on? She's like, I'm falling asleep standing here. Can we please move on? She was like, and then they got like giggly, and she was like crying. She's like, guys, I'm so tired. It was so funny. I'm like, you poor thing. Cause again, the actors are often called earlier than the crew. Because if it's a set, if you're filming at the studio where the set has been there for like months or years and it hasn't been touched because it's just there, it's built already, the crew just has to get there to like turn on the lights and carry a couple things in, and that's it. But the actors have to be in their hair and makeup and get their wardrobe done and have their breakfast and all of that stuff. And they have to do like, and mind you, some of these poor actresses, for the guys, they just put some concealer under their eyes to hide the bags or the wrinkles on their forehead and put a little product in their hair. But the women, they're getting like a full face of makeup on and getting their hair done. So sometimes they're there up to 2 hours before the crew even shows up. The crew shows up at 7 a.m. The actresses are there at 5 a.m.
5, 4, 3 a.m.
Yeah.
I've heard stories of that.
Especially Jamie Alexander, who plays Jane on Blindspot. In the first season, those tattoos were applied to her body. None of them, very few of them are real. So she said that she would often be in the makeup chair for like 8 hours.
Yeah, because it's just wow. It would have to be.
They would have her in like a tank top, so they had to do like her whole arms, her chest, her back, as the show went on, they gave her sleeves, thank God. So they would just do like the raven that was on her neck and her hand tattoos. It was just much faster because they're like, this isn't good use of everyone's time. But in the pilot and the first couple episodes, they're like part of the show and the story.
Mm-hmm.
But then it's like, instead of showing the one on her arm, we'll just show the photo, the scan on her lab, just to make it easier for her. Because good God,
Mm-hmm.
so many interviews I've seen of her talking about it. Because I was a fan of the show before I was ever on it. I started working on the show season 3, and season 1 was like, it was like the biggest show to come out that year. It was like the number one drama on NBC.
Yes, it was.
Like it was huge.
Yes, it was. It was huge.
Yeah. So it's just, going back to your question, I've never experienced an actor, sort of blowing up on the crew or other actors or anything. Actors get along, they're co-workers, they work with each other 4 or 5 days a week for 9 months at a time for years. They're friends. They're co-workers. Some of them aren't like friends, but they're co-workers. Right, for TV. For film, it's a little different because sometimes it's like you see them for a couple weeks because films usually film around a month, depending on the film. If it's like a comedy, it'll film for a month. If it's like a Marvel movie, it could be 3 to 6 months because of all the action pieces.
Correct.
Like one of the later episodes I did of Blindspot in season 5, one of my scenes was in the lab, and my other scene in that episode was this big shootout scene. That scene alone that was a 12-hour day for me. But they shot like 3 scenes that day. One in the lab, that lab scene was shot on a completely different day. I was contracted for the week for that one because there was so much going on.
There was so much going on? Okay.
Yeah. Because it was like lab scenes and other conversation ones and the relationship scenes and then like the big action ones. But for the action scene, the shootout one, it was like, it took us 10 hours to film that one scene because it was a long scene. There's stunt performers, like stunt bad guys in stunt FBI, people who are trained to like fall and pretend to get shot and land safely.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like overacting because a lot of, they'll do like that sort of like if they get shot, they'll like know how to like jerk their body so it looks like they actually got hit.
Yeah.
And react realistically. And a lot of these guys are also like, combat training and all that stuff in case they have to do like punches or whatever. So there's lots of rehearsal for that because they only have so many little explosives to hide everywhere for like to make it seem like things are getting shot at.
Mm-hmm.
Just lots of moving parts. For that scene, there were like 20 actors involved in total.
Wow.
Because it was like a handful of main actors, a couple of us co-stars, and then like 10 stunt performers. So it was like 20 people, multiple cameras. You've got another like specialist who's shooting like a spark gun, basically, so that there's like sparks on the wall behind you and the camera's pointing at you, so it looks like you're getting shot at. Wow. And then they had to reset everything. All right, cleanup crew, let's reset everything because we have to do this whole scene over again. So it'd be like, all right, 20 minutes, let's reset it, and you're shooting it in chunks so that you don't have to fully reset everything every time.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just so many moving parts, and like 8 characters are talking, so you got to get all of their footage, and then you do like the wider angles so that you can see all the action stuff, because a close-up of action is kind of boring. You want to make sure you get like the big spectacle.
The wide, yeah, you got the wide angle, and then nowadays is the Jason Bourne shaky effect. Oh my God.
Right, the shaky camera.
Sorry,
yeah.
It was good for Jason Bourne, but every action movie now, no, like
yeah, they're trying to replicate what was done.
Yeah. So wow,
that one was just so many moving parts. It was such a long day, but the scene ended up looking so badass. I felt like such a badass seeing myself holding a gun and like killing a guy on screen. It was crazy. And you have these prop guns with blanks in them, so when you pull the trigger, it's actually popping and recoiling. So you're also trying to. I'd never done a stunt before. I'd never held a handgun. I've done some like handgun exercises and stuff like that, but I've never like. It's like a BB gun that you train with just so you know how to like hold. But then when they say, okay, like for this scene, we're on your close up. So we're going to give you like the blanks so that there's actually, and when you pull it, there's an actual like case flying out. Like it's all,
wow.
A lot of firsts. It was really, really cool. Really cool learning experience.
You said that on your podcast. That on your podcast. I think when you were watching that scene, you were expressing how the attention to detail that these shows provide. So I'm like, just again, how to like say it, the attention to detail in that you were very surprised or very what was the term you used? I totally forgot. But you were very excited, like you were very appreciative. That is like, yo, they actually take the time, the attention to detail, the glass breaking, the pan to the camera, like you were saying about, oh, that's a fake elevator. That's two people behind closing it. So you know what I'm saying? But just the attention to detail that you, when you watch or you explain it or express something, it's pretty, to me, it's entertaining. And I like that because I like behind the scenes because one, you learn. That's why I think your podcast is interesting. For the listeners, this is exactly what his podcast is about. They talk a lot about the behind the scenes, the actors, they get into the actors as well. Basically what I'm doing is what he does, but more for the acting realm. Correct? Am I?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Actors with Issues is I started it during the pandemic. I talked about it on my own show, but I had wanted to start the podcast since 2019.
Okay.
But again, because I was working so much and was really burnt out, I didn't have time to actually like put it together. And I was working at opening shifts at the gym. The gym opened at that time at 5 a.m. So I'm working from 5 a.m. to like 2 p.m. And the last thing I wanted to do was try and figure out how to schedule interviews and all of that stuff and then edit. But with COVID, I finally had all this extra time to put all that stuff together, and all these actors had time all of a sudden because no one was working. And I'm sure we were all just desperate to talk to someone about acting and how we're all feeling about COVID and where the industry is and all that stuff. But yeah, it's just casual, chill conversations. I call it an interview, but it's really just like it's a chat.
It is
talking about whatever comes up. In some cases, I have like prepared questions, like you do, because you just want to be able to lead the conversation somewhere.
correct.
But with some guests, it's just like, I'm just like, wait, let me start recording because we're talking really interesting stuff. It's like, you catch up for a little bit first, tell them how it's going to go. And then they'll be like, oh, how are you doing with COVID? And like, how's everything with you? And I just get into it. And then they start getting into it. And I'm like, wait, let me hit record. Like, this is really interesting.
Did that happen with
stuff? Let's do the intro and then go in.
Did that happen with your co-star, the one that you did Blindspot with?
There's a couple that I interviewed. I interviewed Dennis Uy, who was one of the bad guys in that scene that I just talked about. And then
Dennis Uy, because he's his father's from Singapore.
Yes, yeah. And his mom is like Dutch, and he was born in the UK, and he's all over the place. Yes, so we had. I think I just started rolling immediately. With him, it was kind of like that. With a couple other people, I also like structured the show a little bit differently. I used to like record my intros after the interview and sort of recap the interview a little bit in the beginning, like, oh, me and Dennis talked about this and this and his experience working on Blindspot. Enjoy the interview, and then actually start the interview clip. But now I kind of just do everything in one shot, to make it a little bit more organic. But yeah, Dennis, that was his first co-star, and it was so cool seeing him on set because I had met him previously at like a film festival. We were each involved in a different short film. It was with this like big acting group, like big acting.
I think this is where it was. You guys were on the set of The Punisher, but then you mentioned NDA and you couldn't get into that. You couldn't get into it because there was a non-disclosure agreement that you had to sign. I listened.
With Dennis?
Yeah. Actually, no.
Alec?
That one was with
Alec.
That was with Alec.
Yes.
Sorry, not with Dennis. Alec. Okay, never mind.
Yeah.
My apologize.
That's okay. We'll talk about Alec too. Oh God, I'm gonna send him a link to the episode. Like, we talked about you on the show.
I mean, it was to me, like, that's one of the questions I want to ask you about the non-disclosure agreements, which I understand they would have to, because all these late night TV shows or comedians that I follow and listen to their podcasts, they'll say is like, well, I can't really say much, but this is about to happen. I'll let you know exactly when, so
yeah.
Why do you believe there needs to be, no, that's a stupid question. Can you go a little bit more?
Ask it. We'll talk. Yeah.
How did you feel about it? How did you feel about having to sign a non-disclosure agreement? Let's just start there.
Well, I get it. because with I mean, The Punisher was a Marvel show, and
Hmm.
a lot of shows don't make you sign non-disclosure agreements, but if it's something to the caliber of Marvel where you
Correct.
want to keep certain plot points a secret or certain actors involved a secret, because not everything's announced.
Hmm.
um and these days they want the big reveal to be in the trailer to like hype it up, and not for there to be like leaked set photos or leaked leaked news or whatever, because that happens so many times and it ends up like ruining the film experience or whatever, like when they leak footage from like Comic-Con where they do like an exclusive trailer and it ends
Yeah.
up online. They're
Correct.
furious because you're like, guys, we showed you this as like,
Wolverine was a perfect example of that.
right, like this is like a secret little nugget we're showing you guys because you're here.
Hmm.
Please keep it a secret. Like, talk about it all you want, but don't like leak the video or whatever.
Correct.
um but with NDAs, it's just with the Marvel shows, especially. I know a ton of, because all of the Marvel Netflix shows filmed in New York. I got to work as an extra on a couple of them and never got to book anything, sadly. I didn't have an agent or a manager at the time, so there's no way for me to book anything on them. Um, but we can get into that a little bit if you want.
Yeah, I
The
have
whole
I have
agent manager
time. You
thing.
let me know if you don't. I have a lot of time, so you just let
Nope,
me
me
know
too.
whenever you want.
Me too.
Oh, perfect, perfect.
um, but yeah, so with non-disclosure agreements, it's just trying to keep things as secretive as possible. Um, especially with Netflix in general and with the Marvel related stuff, because with Netflix, it's not like TV where, like I said, with For Life. So I don't know, I'm not sure when this episode's coming out, but my episode of For Life airs tonight on Wednesday the 17th.
Oh,
We
really?
filmed that like,
Oh,
yeah, it comes out
perfect.
tonight. I just posted on my Instagram this morning. I was like, guys, watch For Life tonight. You might see a familiar face.
Yeah, I saw it
Um,
on your Instagram. That's what I'm saying. Is like he's an
yeah,
investigative journalist for Life. One of my favorite shows. It really is one of my favorite shows. Like I binge watched it,
yeah,
and I've repeated episodes. So it's
so good.
amazing. So congratulations,
Thank you.
congratulations. I'm
I was
glad.
very, very lucky to book that when or just in general, we'll get back to the NDAs, but just to chat about this really quick and that experience. Um,
We can forget about the NDAs because we figured it out. I'd rather talk about this.
yeah,
I'm not gonna lie. How was that experience? How did you
yeah.
get into that? Because I know on your Instagram you actually thanked. I honestly forgot the group, and I do want to apologize. But you thanked the group for helping you out get that role.
Yes. So those were my managers.
Okay.
Um, Entertainment Lab is a great management, an actor or talent management office in New York and LA. They're the first managers that I've only been with them for since last year.
Okay.
So it's been a short time, but they've been very good to me so far. Um, really great group of people working very, very hard to, so an agent and a manager, slight differences depending where you are in your career and where they are in their career,
Okay.
between what an agent does versus what a manager does. A lot of times managers help develop talent. They'll be like, hey, I think you should take these types of classes because you need a little more work on your audition or your on camera stuff. You're very good at theater, but you need more on camera training. Or hey, you need some new headshots. Here's a photographer I recommend. They're great. They can get you what you need.
Okay.
Or your reel is not good. They just help develop you as an actor and as a client so that you can book more roles. Um, Agents are the ones handling, they're the ones submitting you for roles. And the reason they exist is because so that not every casting director gets flooded with millions, like literally could be millions of people saying, I always wanted to be an actor. Please let me audition for this role.
It's
Could you
the
imagine
filter.
having,
It's the filter.
it's
Yeah.
the
Oh,
filter. Yeah. Yeah. So
I would
casting
be one of
directors
those
are
people.
like, let me just, what's one
Let me
line?
just do it. One line. One line.
Yeah. But like I said, for those that one line, actors have to audition and send in their tape, or before COVID, you would go to the audition to the
Mhm.
casting office and do it in front of them. Now it's all self tapes because it's safer, and just more convenient for everybody. So I hope they never stop doing self tapes because I very much like self tapes. I like being able to just do it in the comfort of my apartment with my lights and all of my, everything's in my control. Um, but having to audition for stuff in the office before, I hadn't had to do it much. I didn't have that much opportunity because I didn't have a manager at the time.
Mhm.
But it's like I would have to leave work early and go home and change and then get to the subway, head into Manhattan. You show up to your audition all sweaty and gross because it's like 90 degrees out and it's hot in the subway and you're like huffing and puffing. You have to wait an hour because you're behind. And again, for one line, you have to dedicate like half of your day to go audition for a one-line role.
For one-line
One-line role is going to put food on the table. It's going to pay your rent. But, you know, it's like, it's just way more convenient now with self-tapes. And I really hope that stays the new, they call it's like the new normal right now with self-taping, because it's just easier for casting directors to just be home on their computers and looking at the audition tapes instead of like, okay, next appointment, they're running late, cool, or they had to cancel, great, now we're behind, and now who else can we get in here at last minute, you know?
Yeah.
All these different factors you have to deal with. Now it's just like, can they tape it or not? They can't, great, we can email someone else, you know, the next choice. But yes, so my management office, I was talking about them. So I started with them last June and officially signed with them in October. And they have gotten me a really good number of auditions. I was auditioning like once a week for a different TV show that was filming in New York, which was way more than I had ever gotten before. I would be lucky to attend 4 auditions a year. And it was theater stuff. It was like theater stuff back home. And it's like I knew the director and they knew what role they wanted to give me, but I went into audition just because I wanted to audition. I don't like being handed things. I would show up to auditions and some of them were like, why are you here? We know you're free to do the show, right? I was like, yeah, okay. I'm like, you guys are messing up my audition game. Like now I suck at auditioning because you have just cast me and shit. I'd be like, hey, do you want to play this role? Like, sure. Can I read something for you? A scene? They're like, no, we don't have to. We've worked with you before. We know what you're like. It's like, okay, that's cool. But you know, I was a little spoiled for a little bit with theater back home. Working with the really good group, and then once I started auditioning for stuff in the city, it's like, oh shit, I forgot how to audition. Like I don't have a monologue ready. I haven't had to have a monologue in like 3 years. Like, God, I'm too old to play this role now. Like I can't, you know, this audition is just, you know. Anyway, but my managers, I thanked them because, you know, you always want to thank your reps. They went out of their way to look for you. To be a client, they reached out and they met with you and they're pushing for you. Your reps are kind of like your cheerleaders in a way. They're submitting you for all these roles on this website called Breakdowns that only agents and managers have access to. It's where the casting directors post all the roles they need for this film or for this episode of the show. And then agents
so
and managers
they have their own website for just that.
Yes. Yeah. And you have to be like a licensed, like a SAG-AFTRA licensed or franchised agency or management office. Wow. That way someone can't just pose like, I'm a manager, let me submit my client myself for the role or whatever. Cause some people actually do that kind of shit.
Wow.
But they kind of do that on purpose to be like a filter. So casting directors then have to look through like hundreds, if not a couple thousand submissions for a 1-line role or for a 3-line role or whatever. And they have to go through all of that. And they have like, let's say 25 spots open for auditions. So they have to dwindle down that number. So like when someone gets an audition, a lot of times actors, because you didn't book the role, you know, because you didn't get the job, they beat themselves up over it. But you have to remember, like you beat out several thousand people for this role just for the audition. If there were 25 spots to fill and they had 3,000 submissions, like what's the percentage on that? That's less than 1%. Less than 1% of the submissions got an audition. So you have to like keep that in mind. Like you accomplished something huge. Like this is a big deal. You got an audition for a network TV show or for a major studio film. Sure, it's a tiny role. If you get it, you'll be very happy. But then it's like, actors, because we're our own worst critics, we're just constantly like pining for more. Like, oh, I didn't book it, I'm not good. It's like, but you got the audition, which means your headshots are great because they took one look at your headshots and they thought, oh, they can easily play this character. Let's get them in auditions so we can hear their voice and see what they can do with the line or with the role. That's why headshots are so important. Headshots can't just be a nice photo of you. You have to display some sort of character. And what
I saw that. Like I saw a headshot before, like a professional headshot. Like they had One of my buddies like, yeah, I did headshots and I had to do I did different costumes. I had to wear a suit acting like I was a lawyer.
Yeah.
Then I did one with the stethoscope acting like I was a doctor. Then I did one like a murderer. Like he was doing different headshots.
Yeah.
And like he obviously, like you said, is the good one, but then it's also different characters.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, with headshots, it's easily the most important thing an actor can have, obviously besides training. But the headshots will get you in the audition room. They don't look at where you went to college and where you got your theater degree or where you took a class. It's like they don't
look at that. They look at the headshots.
Right. The first thing to look at is the headshot. Is your name, and it's your headshot and your name that's under it. That's first thing. So they're like, okay, it's I imagine it's like Tinder. They're like, swipe right, they're good. They're good. Oh, horrible headshot. Oh, that one's good. No, it's not good. Just like swiping left and right. It's not like that, obviously, but it's funny to imagine a casting director on a tablet. It's like, they're good. Oh, they're great. So I think it's important for actors to keep in mind, like, look, your audition is already a success. Having an audition, just getting one, is a success because you beat out God knows how many people for this role. They took one look at your headshots and they're like, you look great.
I thought that was the first step. I thought auditioning was the first step. Like, you get an audition. Mm-hmm. Like, I thought it's like, oh, we're auditioning to play this person, show up, and then it's like a huge line, 1,000 people show up for that role, and that's how.
If that's the case, sometimes that is the case. Okay. Sometimes for theater, it's usually an open call.
Okay.
Okay. So like to be in the ensemble of like a theater of a musical, or there's like the Broadway musicals, there's off Broadway, which is it just means it's a smaller theater, but it's still in New York City. Mm-hmm. Broadway just means it's 500 seats or more.
Yeah.
That's all that means. It's a huge accomplishment to be on a Broadway show, on a Broadway stage. But then off Broadway is like less than 499. So it's just a smaller venue. It's usually a little bit not in like Times Square, but it's like a little bit on the east side or the west side of Manhattan. Mm-hmm. Those are usually open calls. Those you're there all freaking day. You're in line from 8 a.m. and then you do your song and they're great. Can you stay for the dance call at 2 o'clock? So then everyone stays to learn a dance combination, and they're trying to see who's the good dancers and who's like a better singer or who's a better dancer or who's like a triple threat. They can sing, act, and dance, That's usually what that's like in New York, at least. Sometimes they will have appointments for those if it's a smaller show, if it's for like a role. Mm-hmm. Role, not like the ensemble open call or the chorus call. But for film and TV, because it's, again, they're trying to filter it out, they hire the casting director to find actors who are repped, who have an agent or manager, who sees potential or sees something in their client to then push them in for the role or to submit them for the role. Otherwise, it would just be a bunch of random people submitting themselves for roles when they have no training. They don't have a headshot. They don't have a resume, all this stuff. So the agents and managers are vouching for their clients in that way to be like, hey, casting director, I think this client of mine is a great fit. Here's their headshot. Do with it what you will. Just consider them. And then they go through all of those people, find that small batch to give them auditions. They'll probably like 3 to 5 of them, maybe give them a callback if it's necessary. But if it's a small enough role, like, we don't need to see you do another tape. Like, there's not a lot to do for the role because the role's a nurse with 2 lines. It's medical jargon or whatever. Like for the role for Life, it was just one of the many self-tapes that I was doing from November to December. December was super busy for me. I was lucky to get like 10 auditions in those like 6 weeks before the holidays.
Did you land any of them?
For Life was the one that I booked.
Oh, For Life was the one you booked out of those 10.
Yeah.
I have to the reason why, because I have to let the listeners know the percentages, but then you brought up a great point in a sense. If you got the audition, sorry if you can hear the baby crying in the background. But like, you've made up a good point. Like, I thought auditioning was the first step. Obviously I knew about the headshots, and then now due to cell phones and everything, you could film yourself doing your monologue for the one liner, your taping. But I did not know that auditioning is is, hey, you've already beat out a whole bunch of people. And then not only that, if you show something in that audition, even though it might not get you there, it's going to get you into something else. So that's where I think it brings up a good point, because now they're seeing your face more often. You're getting the experience of auditioning, and you're also, you know what I'm saying, you're putting yourself out there essentially. And I think that's why your podcast is amazing. I mean, like this, seriously, because a lot of people who want to get into acting and don't know, like they have a spot where you speak to other actors. There's different varieties of different topics of just the aspect of acting and how big of a world it is. And that's what I like. I learned a few things listening to your podcast. So even if I'm not trying to pursue acting, I would do it, because I would do it, but I'm not trying to pursue acting like that. But now it's more intricate. Like this is something serious. And like it's to me, it brings a whole to me it puts it in another light. Another light, like you're shining light to what a lot of people want to think, because like you said, like you've been in these few roles, and again, you started with your management and agent company what, a year ago, 2020 or 2019?
With my manager was 2020. With
your
my
manager
agent was 2019.
Okay.
But with my agent, they're regional, meaning that they're not in my market. So there's different markets. There's New York, LA, Atlanta is booming right now with film and TV. It has been for several years now. There's Chicago, and then like the regional stuff, like some movies will randomly film in like Mississippi or in South Carolina or somewhere, because they need a certain location, so they're just filming down there. But yeah, so
sorry, it's a whole lot to unpack there, but yeah, your podcast is amazing, because your podcast again shows, like, you know, actors with issues is like, huh? At first it's like actors with issues, okay, but then as you listen, it's like, yo, they're teaching you something. Like this is something you could go with a better mindset, so you don't feel as defeated. Like you said, in a sense of you have either imposter syndrome, or a lot of people who don't get the audition, they beat themselves up. I do it myself as like, again, artists or ideas. When it comes to creativity, I beat myself up. Nothing's perfect. So I could understand, as an actor, you're putting yourself in a physical situation, a mental situation, to play a character that's not you, which leads me to a question I do want to ask you, but a character that's not you. So it's like, I don't know. I enjoy it. I truly enjoy it. And anybody who wants to be an actor is like, you got to listen to actors with issues. I for sure would do that. For sure.
That's really sweet. Thank you for saying that. For
sure. It's very entertaining. Like my podcast is not it's entertaining. It's comedy. It's open world. Freedom of speech is what I always say, in a sense of like, talk about whatever. But you have a specific where it's an industry very competitive. And it messes up, like fame, anything can mess up your career. But not only that, your mental is the drive, the mentality you might or going to need to have just to get through certain situations. And I like how you guys are very open about that.
Yeah, that's been my biggest goal with the show, is just providing insight and open and honest conversations between two artists, myself and whoever the guest is, and just, you know, talking about people's past experiences and what they've learned along the way, things that they might have struggled with that they can sort of shine a light on and help other people get through it, because God knows no one is going through a problem by themselves. There's so many other people going through the exact same thing. Something that a guest of mine brought up, her name is Claire. She was, I believe, the last episode of 2020. She was the lead in the World Tour Phantom of the Opera. And she knew a lot of people who were questioning everything about their life and career because of COVID, because they didn't get to act anymore. And they're like, oh my God, what am I if not an actor? Because they realize I have no other interests. I have no other hobbies. All I do is act for a living. And if that's all you do, you're very fortunate. But the second that's taken away from you and there's no end date in sight, you're just like, what am I going to do with myself? Like, I can only sit and sing at my piano so many hours a day. I can only watch television or do a home workout. Like, what else am I supposed to do? And a lot of people have started other hobbies during this time, and I'm really happy they have, because like things like my podcast, sometimes it's stressful because I don't have the energy to edit or to message people and try and book them to be a guest or coordinate a time, because I only have 2 days off during the week. One of those days I try and leave for like personal errands and spend time with my boyfriend and have the day. Just wave from the corner. He's like, hi.
Oh, I didn't even see him. Hey, buddy. I didn't see. I'm trying to make sure that, like it makes it like I have your attention. You have my attention. I always forget how to phrase it. I'm gonna say both, but yeah. Hey.
He said hi. He just nodded. But yeah, I just think it's really important for actors of any stage of their career, whether you've only done stuff in school or whether you're just sort of budding out and trying to put on that hustle, which also the artist actor, we talked about like the sort of starving artist mentality. I hate it. I also don't like the idea that actors have to constantly be hustling for it, because if the opportunity is not there, there's nothing to hustle for.
True. But you do.
When I didn't have an agent or manager, like, you need to stay motivated and disciplined and driven, and keep that goal in mind and sort of like your eye on the finish line, whatever that finish line is, whether it's to be a series regular, whether it's to, get one day win an Oscar or an Emmy award or whatever it is. There's so many different things. But it's just like the hustle can eat at your soul. It can chip away at you because you're stressing yourself out over something that isn't necessarily there yet. Like when I was like I said, mentioned before, it's like, oh, I didn't get to work on that show, but then it's like, well, I didn't have an agent or manager to even get me an audition, so what was I stressing over? It's like, that's out of your control. Something I think actors have to keep in mind is that the only thing that's in your control is your level of skill and your own motivation. You can only control the quality of your audition, especially when it's a self-tape and it's your lights, it's your phone or your camera. It's all on your time. What happens after, once you send your tape, or before COVID and we were at the audition room, once you leave the audition room, you have zero control over what's happening after that. Some people don't get roles because they're too tall, or because they're blonde,
minuscule stuff. There's a mole right here, like their eyebrows.
They don't look enough like the character who's playing the mom. There's too many blondes on the show. They're not quite fit enough to be like the bodyguard or the bouncer or whatever. Their voice is a little too high pitched. It's just all of this stuff you can't control. Sure, you can control your weight and the pitch of your voice, but are you going to walk into this room and just like start talking like this all the time? Like, it's like, no, it's exhausting. It's not who you are. You're going to look uncomfortable because it's not you. I'm a very big advocate that every role you bring should be as much of you as possible. Agent Woods and me look and talk exactly the same.
Yeah.
He's an FBI agent, but he's a lab tech. He went to school for forensics science and biology, probably. I went to school for theater arts. I don't know anything about science. I suck at science. I'm good at history and English. I don't know anything about science or math. Horrible. I'm an actor. I count up to 8, and it's like 5, 6, 7, 8, and that's it. That's all I know. I don't know anything past that.
I know why you count to 8, because theater, if you do the triple threat dance and singing, it's the 8 count. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. My sister was a dancer,
5, 6,
so
7, 8. Go.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's only so many things that you can control. So it's like, don't worry about the things you can't control, because you can't do anything about it. So just let it be. And I know it's easier said than done, but it's like, oh, it's cold out. Nothing you can do about that besides grab a blanket or put on a coat. Do what you can.
Or go running. David Goggins would tell you to go run.
It's just like, control the quality of your audition. If you didn't get the role and you think it's because your audition sucked, work on it. You can control that. Go take an audition class. Go practice more. Find a friend who can be your accountability partner. That was my friend. That was Alec for a long time. We would tell each other when we had auditions, tell each other when the due dates were, and then we would use a self-tape audition app, and he would be my reader over my phone.
Ooh.
When my boyfriend wasn't living with me, and now it's my boyfriend, I torture him now. I was making him do these self tapes with me every week. He hated it. He was
What does
ready
he
for it.
do?
He's very
What does
sweet.
he do?
He's still in school. He's in school
Oh, okay.
for health promotions. Yeah, so he's in college right now.
Okay. John Jay?
He works on. No, he's at St. Francis.
St. Francis. Oh, okay, okay, okay.
Tiny Catholic college in Brooklyn.
I was gonna go to St. Joseph's for baseball. St. Joseph's.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was gonna go. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I mentioned where I went, but I just want to give them a shout out.
It was Horn. I'm gonna mess it up. I read it on your IMDb page. I forgot to write it down. Sorry. Go ahead. You shout them out. Yeah. I don't want to mess it up.
It's a Housatonic Community College. They're in Connecticut. They're the only community college in Connecticut with a theater program. Some of the other schools have like a theater class, and it's usually like a book type of theater class, like theater history or, introduction to theater, and you're just going over.
Correct.
You have like a textbook about the history of theater or whatever. But this one has like a full program. Amazing staff. I would not.
And you graduated?
Funny story. I'm finally graduating this year. I haven't taken a class in like 5 years.
Congrats.
Yeah. I never finished. So I it's one of those situations where I did all of the qualifications. I met all the qualifications, but then I started working in New York, doing as an extra and auditioning and all of that stuff and trying to pursue stuff. So I no longer needed to take classes. So I just didn't go. And there was like this several other like requirements where you had to like make appointments and do all of this stuff. And I would end up booking something and I'm like, whatever, I'll reschedule the appointment. And it just kept happening, putting it off. Ended up working regularly on a couple different shows as an extra. And then I moved to New York, and then just all of these different things kept happening. And it's just like, okay, well, why am I stressing over like getting the piece of paper that says I finished when I'm working in that industry already? Like it shouldn't matter.
Correct.
But then with COVID, they finally waived a whole bunch of those qualifications. My theater professor was the head of the head of the program, Jeff Sheehan, amazing man. If I ever win an award for acting, he's getting a huge thank you.
Shout out to you, sir.
Supportive. Jeff, I love you. If you're listening, he's just been super supportive all along the way. He let me like produce my own like musical theater concert series because when I told him like, hey, like I really want to do something musical theater related, we don't have any classes, what can I do? He's like, oh, put a concert together. I ended up doing those concerts for like 8 semesters every semester, and all of that stuff. But he sent me an email. He was like, hey, they waived it. Please submit this digital application. You don't have to come in. You don't have to do anything. Just submit this to let you know if you can do it. And I just got the email today saying like, dear applicant, we have come to the conclusion that you have met all of the requirements and you'll be able to graduate in 2021. I was like, yes, finally. Again, haven't taken a class in like 5 years.
Congratulations. Congratulations.
Finally fucking happened. Jesus.
Hey, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So that community, Housatonic?
Yes.
Housatonic Community College. Was the reason you started getting bookings and stuff like that because of the connections and I'm guessing the after school programs or anything like that, or theater programs or people that are coming in theater? Was that the reason you were able to get these bookings in New York, or you had to go outside of school, or this was just for knowledge and then you applied that knowledge so when you went to theater and everything else?
It's more the second thing you said.
The second one. Okay.
Yeah, it's such a small school and it's a community college. It's a tiny commuter school. It's not like this prestigious program.
Correct.
Very good program, but it's not like when they see it on your resume, like, oh my God, you went to the Yale School of Drama. It's not like that.
It's not like that. Okay.
Went to Carnegie Mellon or to some of these other huge theater schools or UCLA, their film program or whatever. So it was amazing quality training, wonderful connections I made with like lifelong friends. But it was, again, as I mentioned before, with my mentor, Ed, and his connections, we got meetings and that led to my Blindspot audition. I still had to go audition for that, which was one of the few on-camera auditions I had to do because everything I got after was during COVID and it was all taped. But a lot of the stuff that I'd booked prior to Blindspot, I'd done a couple commercials as well. I did one for Sprint.
Sprint, for
Fitness.
Blink Fitness.
Yeah.
It was Blink Fitness and Sprint. I had that on my
Yeah.
intro here.
So those were like self-submission. So those were sort of open to the public.
Okay.
Not to the public, but it's like if you have a subscription to this casting website, you can submit yourself, submit your headshot, and you're basically being your own agent, which is what every actor pretty much has to do. They have to keep that mentality. No one's gonna call you and say, "Hey, want to be on our show?" It's like, nope, you've got to do the work. You've got to get your headshots, your resume, your reel, and you've got to look at these websites every single day, 2-3 times a day, because as soon as they put up a new casting opportunity, you want to be like one of the first people to send in their material. Otherwise you'll get lost in the shuffle, because by the end of the day they'll have, like I said, hundreds or thousands of submissions. So you want to make sure you're in that sort of like first batch, so you get one of those like audition spots early.
Okay.
So yeah, so I was never, none of the opportunity that I got in for on-camera stuff was ever from the school.
Okay.
But just all of the training and the discipline and everything that I learned there has been applied to everything I've done.
Okay.
Yeah, and yeah, for sure. No one sees Housatonic Community College on my resume. It's like, wow, you went to, I know Jeff. It's like, I don't, it's
what was the most?
I learned so much from them.
You learned so much from there. It would have to be. Those are so close to New York City, so obviously there's got, and it seems like it's a community
like workshops
there.
with professional actors come in. They worked in like the Connecticut theater scene, because there's several equity theaters in Connecticut. We were talking about equity earlier. A theater is either equity or non-equity. Equity meaning the Stage Actors Union. It's just like every project that's filmed is either SAG or non-union, meaning that anyone can do a non-union film. For SAG, only SAG actors can do it. And these are actors who would come in and do workshops with us and teach us like audition technique. They would like help us pick a monologue and help us sort of work through it and like nail your monologue over like a 3-week workshop or all that stuff. Me and Jeff are putting together sort of an on-camera audition workshop for me to do for his current students.
Oh, okay.
As sort of a guest, because it's like I'm like an alumni and I've booked several things now and can share basically what I'm telling you is sharing that experience with them, but working a bit more hands-on. Like, here's a scene that you would do perfectly, because just looking at you, who you are as a person and what your headshot shows, you could play this role easily. Basically, I'll be like playing like casting director and be like, oh, I can see you in this role. Let's see what you do with it. Just reading it for the first time, a cold read, because that's important too. I know a lot of actors who, when they would go to auditions in person, they would go in, they read the sides or the scene. They always send you the scene ahead of time, so you don't just like bring your own monologue or your own thing. It's always from the show for that role. And then I know quite a lot of people who they would read one role and then the casting director's like, that was great. Would you mind reading this one? Because they're like, okay, that was good. You're a good actor. You look the part. But we have this other role that fits you better. So let's see what you can do with this one. And I know people have booked off of that, off of a cold read. They're given like 30 seconds to quickly glance at the 1 or 2 page scene. And sometimes they end up booking it because it's like, okay, casting knows what they're doing. They're like, oh, this was good. I think this is a better fit. Let's see what you can do with it. They nail it. They get the role.
Wow.
The co-star, like, oh, you don't look so much like a hotshot lawyer. Maybe you can play like the gritty detective instead. Like, you're not as like slick or Wall Street looking for this one role. Let's have you play the detective, and they end up nailing it.
Got it. Yeah, I know. I think the first episode, I want to say it was the first episode, about you guys were talking about auditions when you read the script, take away the scenes, the dots, the parentheses and everything, and make it your own, because that would help you better, because it's not fabricated, it's not forced, is what I think one of the tips either you or your guest were talking about.
Yeah, because a lot of times the writer will, in all respect to the writer, every single word and punctuation they write is intentional. They don't just put nonsense on the page, because their scripts.
Pause breaks. You're supposed to say this, but then with a frown, you're supposed to look this way, like you're looking for something.
You don't want to force, right? Yeah, you don't want to force emotion or a gesture, especially when it says like, let's say that it's a scene between a guy and his girlfriend, Maria, and it says Maria shoots him a look. We don't see the look because the self-tape is this. It's just this. It's not cinematic or anything. It's not, no one's sending in their own like short film.
Yeah.
With dramatic lighting and all of that. It's just basic lighting of empty, non-distracting background. This is what I tape my tapes in front of. Just a beige wall. I don't. Some people have like the fancier like the almost like a blue screen, like a chroma blue backdrop, and I'm like, that doesn't flatter my skin tone at all. I'm not gonna use that one. It's gonna like make me look pale as hell. I already don't look very Latino according to television and filmmakers, so I'd never get cast or even get auditions for Latino roles. But it's like, let's get it back so it makes me look paler. That was a good idea. But yeah,
I think that's something
where the hell I was going with that.
No, but what you said there is like, I don't even look Latino. To me, you look Latino. I'm not gonna lie. I look at you through Zoom. I was like, okay, Latino. But then when I was looking at your demo reel, in IMDb, because you are on IMDb, when I was looking at your demo reel, you didn't look Latino. I'm not gonna lie. You're absolutely right. Yeah. You don't look Latino. I thought you were Indian and not Indian Native American. I'm talking Indian. You do? Yeah. Oh, okay. Okay.
I get Filipino a lot.
Really? I get Filipino naturally. Look, I get Filipino naturally. I don't know why, but
yeah. What's your ethnic background?
I'm Puerto Rican, but I was born and raised in Orlando, Florida.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, the thing is, like, Latinos are every shade of white, beige, and brown. It's like we come in all these different because our cultures are so mixed. Like, my parents are both from El Salvador, but my mom, her family is of indigenous ancestry. So my grandma's like brown, and my dad and his whole family, they have European roots, like Spanish roots. So my dad's pale. All of my aunts and uncles on my dad's side are pale. They have green eyes. My mom and some of them are pale, but they have like dark hair, dark brown eyes like me. I look way more like my mom's side of the family. But like my grandma is like India, like brown. Soup, yeah. But yeah, it's it's just coming from such a different background. But then it's sometimes writers have never met a Hispanic person in their life, so they think that every Mexican's a drug dealer, or every every Mexican person like talks like this, man. Like, it's like we don't all talk like that.
It's a stereotype. It's a stereotype.
Exactly. And thankfully things are slowly shedding back. Those stereotypes are being lifted, or they're putting like Latinos in the writer's room, or they're letting a Latino tell the Latino story.
Which is good. I think that's perfect.
Right. Absolutely. That's how you're gonna get to where you want in terms of diversity. Like, movies like Crazy Rich Asians or Black Panther, those movies wouldn't work and be as culturally impactful if the directors and the writers and the producers were not also of those cultures, because they can sort of help develop the story.
It's like Martin Scorsese and Goodfellas. He was raised in that type of environment. That's why they come out so perfect.
That's what he knows. That's the story he's going to tell. That's his world. And these movies are phenomenal for a reason. Because he knows it inside and out. Everyone from his generation is like, oh my God, that's exactly what it was like back then. He nailed it. But someone that grows up now is not. The mobsters in their movie, that if let's say like they're not Italian American, they have no family that was around back then. If they write a mobster movie, it's gonna be like the most stereotypical mobster. Like, hey, Johnny, good, smoking a cigarette and like with his Tommy gun strapped to his back and his fedora and his suit. Like, what? Just all this. It's gonna just be like full of tropes and cliches and stereotypes. And thankfully, like I said, all of that's slowly but surely shedding back with putting projects in the right people's hands, whether it's the directors or the writers or producers or all of them.
But I also think even though it's moving in the right direction, you also bring up a good point though. And that's why, again, I got to go back to your podcast, it's very judgmental. Like, you got to go into this knowing that you are getting judged from first the headshots, like you just said, then the auditions, then managers, agents, because I've heard that
comparing you to who else auditioned.
Correct.
It's like, oh, they're prettier. Oh, he's more handsome. It's like, it's not just you. It's also like, all right, let's look at all of them. No, she's way prettier. We can't use this other girl. Or sometimes opposite, too pretty. If they're trying to
Wow.
do like the shyer girl next door who's like, like if you think of like those 80s and 90s romantic teen comedies,
Big glasses,
they take her
braces.
glasses off, all of a sudden she's gorgeous, and they let her hair down from the pony.
Mm-hmm.
She's gorgeous all of a sudden. But if they're like too pretty from the get-go and they can't like quote unquote make her ugly or whatever by giving her big goofy glasses and a retainer and overalls covered in paint or whatever because she's an artist, or a lot of times that has happened before. Sometimes
He's quoting Princess Diaries. That's Princess Diaries.
Anne Hathaway.
Anne Hathaway.
Such a great movie.
It is a great movie.
I grew up with. Great movie.
Yeah.
I learned recently that the director of that movie also directed Pretty Woman with Julia Roberts.
Really?
Why that movie was so good. I was like, well, Pretty Woman's a great movie too.
It's a great movie. Fantastic movie.
But yeah, there's just, people get judged just as much for not being enough of something as they do for being too much of something.
Okay.
Like I know a lot of people in the LGBTQ plus community who have gone to auditions, and the feedback, they will never tell this to your face, the casting directors. But if you were to ask your agent, like, hey, did they give you any feedback? Like, did the casting director give you any feedback on something? Jenna Fisher from The Office, she says in her book, which I recommend every actor reads, it's called The Actor's Life, a Survival Guide. Fantastic book. She talks about her headshots, every mistake she made when she was in Los Angeles. She had been living and working in Los Angeles for, I think, 8 or 9 years before she booked The Office.
Wow.
And then did 200 episodes of that show, worked on it for almost 10 years. Has done a ton of other things after that, did a bunch of movies, and while she was on The Office, she was in like Blades of Glory. Do you remember that movie? The ice skating movie?
Yeah, the ice skating.
She was in Walk Hard, which is a movie with John C. Reilly. She was in a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
But such a great book. But in that book, she said that she's talked about it on her podcast as well, she auditioned for the lead role in Alias, which ended up going to Jennifer Garner. And the feedback she got from her agents that they got from Cassie said, look, Jenna was great. She amazing audition, amazing callback, but she's not quite sexy enough. Imagine hearing that. Like, you're not quite as good looking. And it's also the opposite. Like, it's like, oh, he's too muscular for this role. He's a FBI agent, not a bodybuilder. He's not like Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's like, he's not the Terminator. He's a cop,
Yeah.
Like, there's a fine line between too much of something and not enough of something, and
not
just
enough
like Goldilocks.
Something.
This is just right. And thankfully that has not been the case with me. But as I was saying before, I know a lot of actors in the LGBTQ plus community who have been told like, oh, they're a little too gay, they're a little too feminine, they're a little too something. Like, the character's gay, but they're not like, out and proud. They're still closeted, and they did it too flamboyant or too whatever, or it's just I've just heard of it happening so much. And again, it's like the writer was like, so you're trying to like defeminize this character. Why? Like, why can't this character be that effeminate? Or the opposite. It's like, oh, they're not gay enough for the role. It's like, what are you talking about? The actor is gay. They know what the experience is. That they are that. But because, again, talking about stereotypes, they want like every gay character. They want every gay character to like talk like this and it's like super fabulous and loves fashion. But it's like, not every. I'm bisexual. I have a boyfriend. I'm not like that. It's everyone's different. Just like we were saying, not being like, oh, you don't quite look Hispanic. Oh, you don't look gay to me. It's like, what does that mean?
I don't think I don't think it should matter, because when it's acting, whether
that's a hot topic right now, sir. That's
really
whether that's been an argument for a couple years now, whether straight actors should be allowed to play gay characters. And my role is, and my answer is topic. Absolutely.
Yeah.
My answer is absolutely, because at the end of the day, you're an actor. I don't want to get a role because I'm queer. I want to get a role because I was the best fucking actor for the job.
Correct.
That's how I see it. Against a straight for a straight role too. If it's me and a straight guy, I would be infuriated if they said, "Oh, well, he got it because he's straight, and you're not. The character's straight." I'm like, okay, the character straight, cool. It's like this also takes place in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
I was born in 93. Does that mean I can't, because I wasn't alive back then? Blah, blah, blah. It's like, I didn't experience that time period. So does that mean that, it's just like all of this nonsense. It's like, if you don't fit the role, you don't fit the role. If the director and the writer and the producers and the casting director all agree you're not right for the role, it sucks, but suck it up. It's
correct.
You just weren't right for the role.
Correct.
If there was something in your audition, you could, again, the audition's the one thing you have control over. So if you think that it has something to do with your audition, work on it. Ask if you could submit a second tape. Sometimes they allow that. If you really, really push for it, if your agent really pushes for you, or your manager pushes for you, you say, hey, they would love the opportunity to send another tape. Can they get another chance? Sometimes they do it. If it's a big enough role and if they did like you, sometimes the casting director likes you, and then they send it over to the producers, and the producer says no. That's happened with me. I've been of those several auditions I had from like October to December. The casting will send updates to your agent or your manager, and they'll say, hey, we'd like to consider them. We're going to push them up to the next stage or whatever.
The next stage, next level. Whatever process you have to go through.
Exactly. The casting director looks at everyone and then sends the couple of their favorites over to the like the producers and to the director. If the director likes them, that like the studio executive level people, they have final say. They're the ones.
Yeah, the execs, not the creators. The execs have the final
money,
say.
the people that finance the show. They want to make sure they match,
Yes.
The people who are like, oh no. Even for the one-liners, for when I auditioned for Life, it was just I think I sent in my tape like on a Monday. By Tuesday, casting said, hey, we'd like to consider them. Here are the dates for the shoot. Please make sure they're still available, or just confirm they're available, and we'll be in touch. A couple days later, said, hey, we're sending them to the final level of approval. And then right before the holiday break, because the industry shuts down from like December 20th to like January 2nd, just for the holidays. They give actors a couple weeks off in the crew. And they said, hey, we didn't even talk about like COVID tests and all of that shit. Jesus, that was exhausting. With that role, because you're getting tested left and right to make sure you're not gonna get anyone sick. But yeah, so, and then right before the holidays, they said like, hey, or my manager called me as soon as I walked into work. I sit down in the office at work. I look at my phone. I was like, oh my God, he called me. Oh God, what does this mean? And then I call him back. He's like, hey, Juan, you booked it. And I was like, oh my God, thank you so much. It was another self-tape. It was one of many I was submitting at the time. I wasn't like, oh man, I want this role. It's a reporter with 3 lines in one scene. It's like, it's had a great experience. It's another credit on my resume. People love the show, so people are going to see it. But it's wasn't something that I was like, man, I want that role so bad. I wasn't like gunning for it. It was just a great surprise because in 2020, a lot of actors didn't get to work. We filmed the Blindspot finale in 2019, in November 2019.
Wow.
It finally aired over the summer during like the height of the pandemic.
Correct.
So it was cool to see that, but it's like when I was watching the episode, I was like, fuck, I miss being on set. I miss this so much. I can't wait until I get to be on the set again. And then right before the holidays, like right before the new year, I get the news like, hey, January 3rd, you're going to be filming. I was like, amazing. Like best Christmas present I could have asked for. Best like welcome into 2021. It just felt like, okay, 2021 is going to be good. You're going to book a couple things. You're going to keep auditioning. You're going to get to that next level. I'm not expecting to be a series regular and anything until like, I don't know, 30. I'm 27 right now.
All right, 27. Oh, nice. I'm 29.
I'm
29. All right.
We're right there. We're almost there.
Yeah, we're almost there. Definitely. Yeah. I know we didn't talk about COVID, but I want to go back to like you said, the debate. Do you feel it's to me personally? I really don't like this, and I don't like. I got to figure out how to way to word this. I honestly don't like the fact that they're using it for race as well. For like certain movies, like Mulan, they have to have an Asian, which I can understand that for the live action. I think it's one of the best ones. The
voice acting feels a little silly.
What do you mean?
So I understand. So I
you understand what I'm trying to get at?
No, I do. So okay. I think it's silly. when it comes down to nationality.
Okay.
So you're telling me I can only play Salvadorian characters? I'm never going to work a day in my life.
Exactly.
When's the last time there's been a Salvadorian person on television or in a film? Never. Because the country is twice the size of Connecticut. It's about as big as New Jersey. It's not, it's a tiny, no one is telling Salvadorian stories.
No one.
So if we're going to get that specific that like, oh, this Japanese character shouldn't play this Chinese character, or this Japanese actor shouldn't play this Chinese character, like what? We're now getting so specific that we can only play ourselves. So I can only play American-born, Salvadorian, bisexual characters. I'm never going to work a day in my life. Like that's just, it's not going to happen unless I write my own stuff.
Because you said it yourself, you look Indian. Like you've gotten that where you looked Indian. I've said it and stuff like that. Yeah. You didn't look El Salvadorian. So it's like, I don't agree with that. I think if you're the better actor and you're good for the role, I think that's what it is. And I think that's where we have a little lackluster in certain films, at least recently.
Yeah. I think we're getting a little bit too specific when it comes to the political correctness, which I think we need to respect everyone's thoughts and wishes. We need to respect everyone's opinions, honor the story as much as you can. But again, as an actor, do you want to hear, let's say it's a Mexican actor and a Puerto Rican actor, and do you want to hear that the only reason, do you want to hear, hey, the other guy was better, but you're actually Puerto Rican, so we're casting you? You're going to be happy for the paycheck, but you're like, I got this because of my ethnicity and not because of my talent or my skill.
Which goes against every federal law, by the way.
Exactly. When at the end of the day, there are anti-discrimination laws put into place where they can't ask you. They will say, the thing is on like the casting breakdowns, it'll say character as LGBT, like it has a character description. It'll have the character's name, their presented gender, so male or female, or if their character is trans and that's part of the story, they'll sometimes say, you know, they'll say like LGBTQ plus characters are strongly encouraged to apply. Trans actors are strongly encouraged to apply, whatever it may be.
That's good.
It's strongly encouraged. It's saying like, we want diversity. We want to be as authentic as we can, but you cannot ask someone when they walk in the audition room for a gay character, are you gay? It's, like you said, it's a federal, it's a legal problem at that point. They can't discriminate against people in the LGBTQ plus community, people of any specific type of race or whatever. If the character is Irish American, they're not going to cast a Mexican actor to play that role.
No,
because they don't fit the description.
No,
and that's really what it should be. But that's only on appearance. You know, if it's a story about a family in the UK, it could be a white family or a black family or an Indian family, because those races have predominant presences in the UK. Sure. You know, all of these black actors who are from the UK who are in like, you know, the Black Panther franchise and all of these other places, you know, they're, you know, like I said, like no one is from one single place. Are we going to tell all these British actors they can't play Americans anymore?
That's one of the debates
because
too.
They're not American.
Yeah,
it's
that's
silly.
one of the debates.
So
I think it's
silly.
silly. I think it's silly.
It's so silly. It's like, I respect people's want for authentic storytelling, but at the end of the day, don't you want just good storytelling?
Yeah, because there's not a lot out there now. A lot of independent films have way better storytelling. To me, at least what I've been seeing, it has better storytelling, dialogue, emotion, even
directing.
Directing. Oh yes. Yeah. So okay.
Again, it's like I understand what they want to do. They want to push for inclusion, but you can't force inclusion. You can't force diversity if the story doesn't call for it. If we're gonna do a movie about like a 1920s gangster Italian American family during the Great Depression, they're not going to be Hispanic. They're not going to be Asian. They're not going to be black, because we didn't have very predominant presences during that time period in that place.
If it's a fiction, it's a different story. But if it's based on
if it's a space movie, like when people were like a black stormtrooper, what? It's like, guys, it's another galaxy entirely. It's fiction. A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. With Marvel, where people upset that Gamora was a Hispanic actress, no, because she's a green alien. Yeah, it doesn't matter.
It really doesn't.
Valkyrie.
People were mad at that.
No, I'm saying were people? No, because it didn't matter.
Oh, okay.
In so many other instances, it shouldn't matter.
It shouldn't.
Really
Yeah,
shouldn't matter.
It should not.
But again, there's a fine line. But also, it also comes into what we were talking about before with stereotypes and cliches. If you cast a straight actor to play a gay character, it shouldn't be an offensive portrayal.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what people had a problem with James Corden's performance in The Prom, the movie on Netflix,
okay,
the musical.
Mm-hmm.
People hit like, okay, first the people said the problem isn't that you cast a straight actor, is that you cast a bad actor. You have Andrew Rannells, who's a gay man,
mm-hmm.
who would have killed in the movie as another character, who would have been great as James Corden's character. You have all of these like big names in Hollywood who are phenomenal singers, phenomenal actors, but you cast this guy who did over the top, annoying portrayal of a gay character. And mind you, it was a musical on Broadway first. So you couldn't bring in like the Broadway actor who knows this role inside out because they did it for months in New York City.
Mm-hmm.
You've already got Meryl Streep and Kerry Washington and all of these other huge names. You can have like one sort of like no-name theater actor in the movie, you know?
Correct.
So at the end of the day, it comes down to like, so at that point, it's then the actor's responsibility to respectfully play the role and to not offend anyone any further. Because at the end of if it's a good portrayal, it's a good portrayal. Like, you know, the movie Call Me by Your Name, Armie Hammer and Timothée Chalamet, both two straight white men. They played two gay characters. They were phenomenal in that movie because they're actors. Correct. Those characters, their portrayals, like, wow, these actors, like these characters want each other. It was a gay relationship between like a college grad student tutoring like this older teenage Italian kid. That's what the story was about, and they end up falling in love and whatever, but like the kid isn't out to his family, and it took place I don't remember what decade exactly, but it was like before modern times.
Before that was okay, so it's a little bit
before
more
that was widely, and it's still, I wouldn't say it's still widely acceptable. It depends where you are.
Correct.
But yeah, it's you know, again, their performances were just phenomenal, and Timothée Chalamet got so much critical acclaim for it. Does it matter that he's straight? No. Again, it depends on what the character calls for, what the story calls for, and if it's respectful and if it's good, it shouldn't matter.
It should not matter.
It really shouldn't matter. I think it's so silly when we get to such specific arguments, not arguments, but just like debates regarding that subject. It's like, as long as it's good, I don't care. I can't tell that they're not that.
Correct.
Doesn't matter.
Correct. I have one more question.
Yeah.
Oh no, go ahead. Continue.
So just another quick example in the movie Crazy Rich Asians. They're supposed to be like Chinese/Malaysian characters. There were several like Filipino actors involved, and I think a few Japanese actors, and some people had a problem with it. Some Asian critics or like commentators online had a problem thinking like, oh, it makes people think that we're interchangeable. But then it's like,
that's what acting
how
is.
Specific would it? What's up?
That's what acting is, though, being interchangeable. Denzel and Robert De Niro talk about that all the time, especially when they go into a character and they try to study the character mannerisms, and stuff like that. So
Denzel played Julius Caesar on Broadway.
Yeah, exactly.
He was a Roman. He was white, but Denzel didn't. He killed it. It was amazing. Robert De Niro, an Italian man, played an Irish American in The Irishman.
In The Irishman, yeah.
They gave him color contacts and they dyed his hair and just changed his appearance a little bit to a non-offensive way. He talked exactly like Robert De Niro. He talked exactly like he does. Exactly. You know, he didn't change anything about his performance. It was still great. He was
Goodfellas.
Goodfellas.
Right. He played an Irishman too. And what they were taught, like the guy who wrote the actual story, the book, like they were talking about how Robert De Niro, he really asked questions like, how did he hold his cigarette? Did he hold it like this? How did he speak? When he talked, where was his hands? What was his hands doing? How did he look when he was engaged in talking to you? Like these tiny details. I'm sorry. I sorry, I do a lot of I told you I do a lot of listening, and it's just things that I could
I
use
love
in
those
life.
conversations though. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
If you or if any listeners haven't checked out like the Actors on Actors series on YouTube, it's from Variety, like the
Okay.
magazine. They do it around award season.
Okay.
Usually it's in person. They're in this little studio and it's like just two actors randomly paired up. There was one, it was Charlize Theron and Adam Driver.
What?
There was Patrick Stewart and Thomas Middleditch from Silicon Valley, like a comedic actor, and Patrick effing Stewart.
I know, right?
No, Professor X, Jean-Luc Picard, Shakespearean actor, all of this stuff. And they did Robert Pattinson and J-Lo, like such random pairings of people during each year's award season. Like who's like what actors are like sort of like in the buzz right now, and they'll just pair them up and they talk about the projects that they're sort of being acclaimed for, but then they'll just like talk about random stuff. They paired up Paul Rudd and Chris Evans, not to talk about anything Marvel related, about Chris Evans' show on Apple TV defending Jacob, and then forgot the name of the project that Paul Rudd was a part of on Netflix. But it's just like they're promoting that and talking about their creative processes. Like, Chris, was it hard for you or difficult for you to sort of like take away cap from your acting because you've been doing it for so long now? Was it different to get into this storyline where it's like completely different character, and he's like a lawyer from Boston, which is like he's from Boston, so that he had that connection? And really, really cool conversations with two actors talking about their craft. Sometimes they know each other really well because they've been in the industry for a long time. Other times it's Robert Pattinson and J-Lo. They probably never even met before that day. But yeah, definitely check out that series. I think it's really cool.
It's a great no. All right, and that's me. I will do it because being an actor, I think you have to have such respect because I know what it is to try to perform in front of a camera. Even when I'm trying to do the podcast, I get so nervous. It's just like, where's my extrovertness happening right now? So
yeah,
like there's
in addition to that series, really quick, there's another one called like the Actors Roundtable.
Oh yes,
yes, those are great.
Those
have
are
like
fantastic.
5 or 6 of like the nominees, or just again the actors who are like on the buzz at that time, and just like these like 45-minute to hour-long conversations talking about all of these different things. About like when the Me Too movement came up, that really came up. They're talking about different things happening in current events and how it's affecting the industry and all that stuff. They just released one for the main actresses. I'll look it up really quick, but Zendaya was in it because she was it's Glenn Close.
Glenn Close
herself. We love Glenn Close. It's Glenn Close, Kate Winslet, who we all know from Titanic. That's like what we know her from the most. Zendaya from her work on Malcolm and Marie, which is a phenomenal movie. I don't know if you've seen it. Vanessa Kirby, Carey Mulligan, Andra Day. I don't know those last. I know like the names, but I don't remember what they're
Oh, I see it. Yeah, it's right here. The Carey Mulligan and Zendaya, Feminist Rage, Promising Young Women.
Phenomenal. Yeah.
And what was the other one? The one with the round table? Actors Round Table? You can hear me?
Yeah, sorry, my headphones just cut out for a second.
Got it. Yep, the Actors Roundtable. Yeah, I've seen
such a great series.
Such a great series. It's by the Hollywood Reporter. Yep, they have one with Shia LaBeouf, Robert De Niro, Tom Hanks, Jamie Foxx. That's one. Then Chadwick Boseman, rest in peace. Yeah. They have a lot. Those are the good ones. And the one you're talking about, yes, Zendaya, Glenn Close, Kate Winslet. And someone else as well.
It's funny. Those are like over Zoom because they can't do them in person.
They can't do them in person. Yeah. Has there ever been a role? And this would be my last question. Has there ever been a role where it was difficult? Because I know you spoke about you want to take roles that is about like you essentially. So it's not but has there ever been a role that was difficult for you to achieve? And has there ever been a role that was difficult for you to just like not have those characteristics in your actual real life? Does that make any sense?
Yeah. So your second part, the answer is no.
Okay.
I am not a fan of what people perceive as method acting, that like all the characters like living in my head and it's affecting all this other stuff. To me, acting is purely performance.
Okay.
I haven't had a role where it is so far away from me that I have to like change my psychology to be that person.
Okay.
To me, if you're a skilled enough actor, you can do your research. You can be like Robert De Niro and ask, how would he hold a cigarette? How do you think he would hold a cigarette? Would it be over here? Would it be between these two fingers? Would it be pinching it like that? Would it be like this?
Yes.
Like that?
Yes.
It's like, it's all about the character. It's all about the character. But at the end of the day, it's your job to tell that story.
Correct.
Does it really matter how the character, if the character is based on a real person, does it really matter how they held a cigarette? Especially if it's like someone they didn't know. If it's like, how did this celebrity hold the thing? Sure, you should do it with a celebrity because there's probably hundreds of photos of them doing it, and that's how they did it. So that's how you should do it. But if it's like someone fictional or whatever, you know, it's up to you, and you're collaborating with the director, of course, and with your fellow co-stars on screen who you're working with to piece that story together. So, I've never had the opportunity to play a character that's so far away from me that I have to do something drastic like that. But again, I'm an actor who went to community college, and on Blindspot, I played an FBI lab tech who probably went to Quantico and learned how to fire a gun and years of experience in the science field. And that's not me.
Knows biology and math.
Right. That's not me. But the biggest, so here's a big audition tip for those, because I've auditioned a lot recently for, in New York, there's a lot of police type of shows and medical shows. Like New Amsterdam's a medical show that takes place in a hospital. And you know, there's like Law and Order. There's a new Law and Order show that's coming out as well, and a couple other things. But often the roles you're auditioning for are professionals in their field, much like Agent Woods. He's a professional in his field. He knows what he's talking about. The biggest thing is saying all of these things confidently because you're an expert in that field. If you're auditioning for the role of an anesthesiologist who's saying all this medical terms, you need to nail those medical terms as best as you can, because in reality, a doctor is going to know how to pronounce those words.
Correct.
They're a professional in their field. So it's like, okay, so I have to reach out to someone I know who's a nurse who can maybe help me with the pronunciation, or I have to ask, you know, whatever, look it up online, something. You have to do your research.
Yeah.
So that's just a big thing for me, is just making sure you do your research, that you're committing to giving an authentic performance. If it's, whether it's an accent, whether it's the way someone walks, because they walk with a limp. So you want to sort of, you don't want to walk with a limp 24 hours a day and then end up giving yourself a back problem because you're changing your body.
Correct.
But yeah, the whole method acting thing, I'm generally just not a fan of, because it just, I mean, even people like Robert De Niro and Laurence Olivier, who's one of the greatest actors of his generation, way, way, way back in the day, people would ask like, oh, like, how would I get into the mindset of the character? And they're like, try acting. Just act, just say the lines. Like, come on, like, you know, it's not rocket science. Just act, just say the lines. What was your first part of the question? I delved so much in that.
No, that was the first part of the question. You answered it, which was, has there ever been a role where it was difficult for you to try to, like, you know, was it difficult? Was there difficult for you to try to get into the character or try to bring out the character to life, in a sense? So you've answered that question in the sense of like, I haven't been there yet. I haven't been tested. I would call it, in my world, in my realm, it's called tested. I haven't been tested yet. It's not a wall that I have faced yet, an obstacle or an adversity that I haven't faced yet. You faced other adversity though. And again, that's why I think Actors with Issues, your podcast, I think that's it's great because it brings a different perspective. It helps you get into a better mindset and understanding mindset to pursue an acting career, to be able to, you know, do what you want to do, in a sense. So that's that, you know, so that's where, but yeah, that was the first part of my question. So yeah.
Probably the most difficult role I've done though.
Theater? Was it in theater?
It was theater for sure.
Theater?
Because the roles I've done on screen have been a couple pages or a couple lines of dialogue, nothing challenging. I did a musical called Assassins by Stephen Sondheim, and it is about the people who either successfully or unsuccessfully tried to assassinate a U.S. president. So John Wilkes Booth, who murdered Lincoln, is in there. John Hinckley, who tried to kill Reagan. I played a character named Giuseppe Zangara. He was an Italian immigrant who tried to kill FDR.
Wow.
So I had to put on an Italian accent. The character was this little raging ball of fire. I'm 5'11". I'm not this like tiny Italian guy. I'm Hispanic, I said, but I just had to like slightly contort my body like with a little hunch to come off as a little shorter, at least the same height as some of the other guys who were a little shorter than me. So when they called me like little man, I was not taller than them because that just is funny. It doesn't make sense, but it's funny. But I for that was maybe the most challenging one overall because I'm a bit more of a reserved person. So for me to be like screaming on stage in a fury because of X, Y, and Z, a little different. Also just vocally challenging. A lot of high notes in that role. And it's just like getting that training into your singing voice so that you can do that role and sing those roles without straining your voice, without hurting yourself, without affecting your voice. Because some days you have two shows. You'll have like a 2 o'clock and 8 o'clock. So if you blow your voice out in the 2 o'clock, what are you going to do for the 8 o'clock show? You've got your own solo, you got a song. Because pretty much every assassin got their own song. So at that point, it's like, just trying to be healthy and really train yourself. That's the thing with theater, because you're doing it so much. It's like can get a bit straining.
Yeah, the voice,
that's
the speech. Yeah, the speech was probably the most difficult. And like you said, introvert, because it is. When I've taken therapy, psychologists say it's easier to be extrovert and bring you down than to be introvert and bring you up. So I could figure why it would be challenging for you.
Which is funny because that's an acting note directors give a lot. They will say like, or just in general for actors, like do too much that I have to bring you down rather than me constantly telling you, give me more, give me more.
Yes.
I need more.
And that's in life. That's in life. There's a lot of industries where that I want you to I'd rather you give me more and let me have you toned down than I need more because that it does get stressing and just annoying. So you will be on tonight for the For Life, so the episode comes out tonight. Correct? Congratulations.
Yes, season 2 episode 9.
Season 2 episode 9. I think I'm in episode 7, so I'm gonna catch up if I don't have work. Hopefully, I got to check my phone, but I'm using it as the webcam. Also, we can see you on the Blindspot season 3. Are they renewing? Are you coming back, or is that something you can't say?
So it's done. We shot the series finale in November of 2019 and aired over the summer this past year, 2020. But we got to 100 episodes. The finale was episode 100.
Okay.
Which for an actor is a big deal because when you're on the show that reaches 100, you get syndicated. As an actor, you get paid for the day you work and all that stuff.
Correct.
Then you get residuals, which everyone hears about. It's like, oh, every time they air the movie, they get another check, which technically is true. Not the same amount. It's much smaller, but it,
yeah.
If your movie's playing on FX a ton of times, you get a nice little check. And then things like DVD sales and all that stuff and on-demand rentals. And if it goes to streaming, you get compensated because it's basically like, hey, we're publishing your face and your work. You're getting compensated for it. Another union thing. Beautiful that the union does that. But once the show reaches 100 episodes, the other smaller networks can purchase it to then do like marathons, like Law and Order is on NBC, but then there's marathons on like the Ion channel and on USA. And you could watch. The Office has been off the air for years, but it'll still play on Comedy Central and TBS. So those actors are getting their paychecks. They're very happy that they got to that level, till they hit 100 episodes, because then it's like cool residuals for life, and that's how actors can survive between jobs. The working actors, at least.
True.
Yeah.
And congratulations for you about to receive a college tuition.
Thank you.
Have to. I dropped out twice, so I have to say congratulations for someone who's able to get that. So, and also, is there any new thing besides obviously for life today in the episode? Is there anything we could besides more episodes on your podcast? Of course, everyone, Actors with Issues. Make sure you go check it out. It's on Spotify and all major podcasting platforms. Do you have any interesting guests you're bringing in? Do you have any? Because I know you said you were doing short films, and I know we weren't able to get into it today, but I am a little bit pressed for time here.
No problem.
And wanted to know, I know we didn't get into it in a sense of your short films and your scripts and everything like that, which I would want you back on the podcast, and we could definitely talk about it more, especially.
Awesome.
I definitely would want you back, especially to know how your career has going, and to be honest, possibly create a friendship relationship as well. I really do. Again, you're very good when it comes to making people understand, like, some of the aspects you could bring your behind the scenes, and because a lot of people, including myself, I would rather watch behind the scenes of a project than the actual project sometimes, because of the people there and how they get into this role, and the mindset or the intricacies about the lighting, like you said, the reflective, how you already know how one pane is reflected one way, so it's like that stuff is like, I didn't even realize that. And so
it's just like, oh, that movie was cool, but then it's like, look at the scale of how many other people had to put so much work. They don't get the trophies, they don't get they got their paycheck, they got they got paid for their work, but they don't get like the accolades and the recognition. I don't know if you've watched The Mandalorian on Disney Plus.
Yes, I have. I started on episode 3 because my favorite.
Once you finish season 1, definitely watch. It's called The Gallery, which is the behind the scenes documentary series they made about making season 1.
No, I finished season 1. I'm on season 2, episode 3. So there's a gallery.
So you can watch the documentary series. It's called The Gallery. It's on Disney Plus as well. But it's a docu-series about each episode is like casting, the score, which is like the music, which I obsess over with film and TV, is the music, because I'm a musician and a singer. I love that stuff.
What instrument you play?
I play piano.
And
a little, I dabble in bass, but it's been years since I've like picked up. I didn't bring it to New York with me, so it's been a couple years since I touched a bass guitar. But with and then with WandaVision, they just announced that they're releasing a docuseries about that on Disney Plus called like Marvel's Assembled or something like that. Like the making of WandaVision. But that's gonna be super cool, because it's like, how do they develop the story, casting, the music, the technology? Like with The Mandalorian, the set, you're gonna be mind blown at how much of that set was not real.
Wow.
You're gonna be mind blown. It's
really
so cool how they do it. I won't say how they did it, but it's just so cool how they managed to film all that stuff. Yeah.
And where can people find you? I know I already mentioned IMDb. Where else?
Yes. So my Instagram handle is Juan Ayala Official. In case I'm being famous one day, I want that official in my thing once it's verified. On Twitter, Twitter's pretty boring. I just retweet a lot of stuff, but it's Juan Ayala, as in the letter I, like iPhone.
Okay.
My website, juanayala.net, also has my podcast stuff up there. And just trying to audition when they come my way, and trying to, get a couple more bookings this year and keep the ball rolling. Got some good momentum going. I want to keep going.
Keep going. No, yeah, definitely keep going. I can't wait to see you. I watch For Life, so when I saw that on your Instagram, I was like, I had to go through, so I can't wait for it to come out tonight. And it comes out tonight. It's February 17th, which is today. When this comes out, the episode would already have been dropped. So if you check out this episode, and or if you already seen the episode, go check it out. And this guy's right here. So congratulations. Thank you for giving me the time.
Thank you
for open time to be able to do this. I do appreciate it. I want you back. Definitely. I want to know how everything's progressing. And definitely I'll still keep listening to your podcast for sure. I actually have it subscribed already on my girls Spotify, but I got to do it on mine now.
We've got a couple of cool guests coming up. I was just looking at like my release calendar, because I tend to do them several weeks ahead of time. Like there's been a couple of days that I'll knock out like 2 or 3 interviews in a day. So that way, if life gets in the way and I can't release an episode, or
so
whatever,
tiring. That's so
like
tiring.
early on in the show, I was like, oh my God, I don't have a guest for this week. It's fucking Wednesday. And the episode comes out Friday. So I'm like scrambling to schedule someone for Thursday or whatever. But now
you ever need a guest, call me. You ever need a guest? No, seriously. You ever need a guest? Like, I work 3 to 4 hours a day, and it's usually anywhere between 5 to 10. So whenever you let me know, 2 a.m., 1 a.m., it don't matter. I'm serious. You let me know.
Gotcha, buddy. So again, I'm not sure when your episode will come out, but our most current guest will have been Roman Zaragoza, who is an actor. He worked on, there's a lot of theater. He's a West Coast actor, but he worked on it's a show with Kobe Smulders on ABC. I'm forgetting the name completely. But coming up, we have Stephanie J. Park, who played Eliza in the national tour of Hamilton, the musical Hamilton. Pierre Marais is an actor, South African actor who worked on Broadway in the Disney production of Aladdin. Wow. And Nina Lafarga, who was in the Heights on Broadway and a bunch of other shows. So a lot of really cool like theater people coming up who I haven't gotten to showcase much, but I got to interview a bunch of them recently. So that's really cool. I'm excited to share those conversations, some good stuff with them.
Yeah, I bet. And I know, and since you already know the intricacies of behind the scenes, you know which questions to ask. So that's good. Yeah. And for more information,
and also just picking their brains, because I've never done a Broadway show. I've never done theater in New York. So it's like, what was that experience like? What was like getting the call that you were like, are on Broadway?
Oh, your nerd's gonna come out. Yeah. Your nerd is gonna come out. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. I appreciate it. Again, Juan Ayala, thank you, sir. I really appreciate it. Again, you can check him out on Instagram. Again, he's on the Blindspot season 3. He's also will be in For Life, today's episode, February 17th. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.